Good morning, everyone. I'm Krista Westervelt from the Chatham County Council on Aging. I want to thank you for joining us today for our first ever Couch to Couch conference. I know a lot of you are probably used to coming in person to our senior education conference, and given our circumstances, we are happy that we have the opportunity to bring this into your home so you don't have to go out for a conference. Our first speaker teaches in the Occupational Therapy Graduate Program at the University of North Carolina and works to connect students and faculty with aging-related projects in education in her role as coordinator of campus initiatives for the UNC Partnerships in Aging program. As an occupational therapist and a folklorist who has worked in both medical and community-based settings, she's interested in how people live their daily lives and how we adapt to changing situations as we age. For 7 years, she has partnered with the Orange County, North Carolina Department on Aging on programs and grant writing to address transportation, home accessibility, and dementia caregiving. She has particular experience in environmental modifications and using assistive technology in everyday life. And today she's bringing us Making It Easier, Adaptive Equipment for Daily Use. Join me in welcoming Jenny Womack. I will spotlight here in a moment. Here we go.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be with you, and thanks for letting me kick off your series. It's really exciting what you're pioneering there in Chatham County. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, if that's okay, Krista, and we can get some feedback if you're seeing it.
Should be. Let me know. Oh, there you go.
Okay. And I know we're a relatively small group. I'm fine with sort of questions and conversation along the way, depending on how that works for Krista. So, you know, feel free if you have something that you want to enter in the chat. We have a few minutes together today, and then I'm happy to open it up and just have a conversation. So I had, sorry, there we go. I had talked with Krista about a couple of topics that I spend a lot of time with. And so one of them is about this idea of adaptive devices, or you might hear the term assistive technology, aids to everyday living, ease of use devices. Basically what we're talking about are gadgets that sort of make tasks easier. And I want to introduce all the language because one, you might find that if you search something a certain way, like using the term adaptive device, you might find something different than if you search the term ease of use devices. Some of them sort of get associated with different issues or different reasons why they might be used. So just so you know that there's a lot of different language out there. I'm also, this is not on your handouts, but I should say as a disclaimer that I am going to mention, or you might see the names of brand names or product names, but that's not because I'm trying to endorse a specific company or item. I'm using them as examples of certain device characteristics or things that you might look for. What I will just say from the long view is 25, 30 years ago when I was starting to practice as an occupational therapist, we actually made a lot of things in a custom way for people who had certain needs. And now there's so much that's available in mainstream commercial outlets, and that's a wonderful thing. It's so much less expensive. It's so much more available. People can try things out, but that also means that it's hard to keep up with every source for every item. So what we want to talk about today are what types of adaptive equipment are available for everyday tasks to help us sort of carry out everyday life, what purposes they typically serve, like why are the reasons we use them, what we should think about maybe before purchasing equipment or making a definite decision about something. And then I'll share a few resources and also invite you all to share your favorites because as I mentioned, there's so many out there. And I'm going to focus a lot on sort of common everyday tasks and what we'll call low-tech assistive technology or adaptive devices instead of the more complex high-tech solutions. I know that, you know, just by virtue of us all being on Zoom or through our phones today, you're probably all device users, electronic device users. And the first thing I will just say is please get familiar with your accessibility features on those devices because they're fantastic for doing things like changing the size of things that you're looking at. But today we're going to really focus on sort of those lower tech items that are easy to find, but sometimes also easy to make the wrong decision about in terms of your needs and what kinds of features they have. So a lot of what I have done over my life's work is to work with people who are really in a situation where their bodies are changing or they've had an illness or an injury. And even the most sort of fundamental daily task of dressing, bathing, and grooming become really difficult for some reason. And there's often just this moment where you want to realize that it's still possible. There's still ways that you can do things, and having people define what's most important to them to do is, of course, step number one. And I wanted to point out some of these devices or talk about them in general in categories because they're also the most shopped for devices by people over the age of 65. So if you look at some of the consumer reporting and AARP reports on adaptive devices, we are the demographic who's buying these types of devices. The one thing, though, that's helpful to know is that even with the most basic things, so if you look over in the dressing column there, the middle picture shows some pieces of equipment that are often given to people who go into the hospital to have a hip replacement, some of them somebody maybe who has a knee replacement, or they can often be found that it's commonly called sort of the hip kit. And these are really helpful pieces of equipment. They're a reacher, a long shoehorn, what's called a sock donner, a dressing stick, and a long-handled sponge. But they're the ones that are given out sort of in these kits are very generic. You don't really know that there are actually other options. And for example, there are dozens of different kinds of reachers. And the reason that matters is because the one that you see pictured here, it's a great tool, does a lot of nice things, but it's really not very functional for lifting heavy items. So if you took that reacher that's in the basic hip kit that you get and you try to do something like lift a can of soup off a shelf that's a little bit over your head, it's going to fail, or at least give you some difficulty, we'll say. Because it's too long, and it's also not made for that kind of grasping. So what you may not know is that there are other reachers that will do that kind of thing. And do you want to own 10 reachers and have them all over your house? Probably not. So it's worthwhile problem solving a little bit about the length of reacher, the way that it grasps, the way that you need to be able to use your hand to grasp it, things like that. So the main message with that is know for yourself that there are many options and look for opportunities to try things out. And I'll give you some tips at the end of the program for how you might do that. In terms of bathing, of course, one of the things that we're most interested in is safety. And we know that bathrooms are the places where the most injurious falls happen for all of us, not just people who are older, but particularly for bathing, we want to do things like, can we move to seated bathing? Can we use equipment that is going to enable us not to have to reach, bend, use necessarily slippery soap and drop it under our feet, things like that. Whatever a person's safety concerns are, there are numerous pieces of equipment that might be helpful in that situation. And then the task that people think a little bit less about, because dressing and bathing are sort of big ones for all of us every day, but the grooming tasks, the things that people often like to be able to do for themselves, but don't always think about adapting. So I just put 3 examples over here. One is a toothpaste squeezer. That has been, I found, really helpful for folks that I've worked with who have osteoarthritis in their hands, or I've worked a number of years with people with spinal cord injuries. That also can be helpful for people who have weakness, paralysis in their hands. The toilet hygiene aid that's in the middle is something we rarely talk about sort of in everyday use, but it's actually an extender for people who have a more difficult time reaching to do toileting hygiene. And then the last piece, really commonly available piece of equipment these days, is a mounted nail clipper. So one of the things that I often work with people on is, do they need to be able to sort of free up one hand, or do they only have one hand to use for the task they're trying to do? And in this case, you can clip the nails on one hand while you use a different part of your body to press on the nail holder. You don't have to be holding it in a pinch in your fingers. You might be able to use your wrist or your elbow to actually hit the lever once it's stabilized like that. So those are the kinds of things we're trying to do with this type of equipment. So then we can expand out into things like household tasks and other life tasks. And I added a couple of pictures here that aren't on your handout. If you need to move me around to see them, feel free to do that. But I wanted just to represent that these devices are, sometimes they're somewhat specialized, like you might see the really large magnifier in the bottom, or the typing sticks, which are helpful for someone who doesn't have good grasp in their hand. But there are also things that are really universal, like lever door handles, which are really commonly available these days. The knife that's in the upper left-hand corner, some people call it a rocker knife. I also found one when I was traveling once that was made up in Alaska called an ulu knife. And so you might think about these are not always devices that are just made and sold to people because of changing function, but a lot of times you can find a commercially available or specifically available device that's sort of on the mainstream market. So lots of options to choose from there. What these represent, though, are a lot of the kinds of different characteristics we're trying to achieve with adaptive devices. So we're trying a lot of times to take away the challenges or the demands of hand function or strength or range of motion. We're trying to sort of meet in the middle where people's abilities are. A couple of things are really specific adaptations. I mentioned the typing sticks, but in the upper right corner, I also put an adapted fishing rod. And I've worked with several people who were avid fisher people who wanted to keep doing that, but were having some changes in their strength or their hand function. And we've been able to adapt fishing poles for that purpose. So lots of things available on the market today. And I encourage you to look for whatever your interest and passion is. I did put a cell phone in the bottom left just because many of you may have heard about the jitterbug phones, and the real advantage of those was the large font size and the larger numbers on it. But I also do want to put in a pitch again for looking at the accessibility features on your regular cell phone or smartphone, in particular, if you have one, that you can get enlarged font to this size, even on a typical smartphone. It's sometimes a little challenging in terms of keeping everything you want on your screen, but there are some options out there for that. So why are we often seeking this kind of equipment? Well, we're trying to match the effort that's needed for a task with our current abilities. So I'm going to use myself as an example. I've had quite a few changes in my vision over the past decade. I'm losing a lot of visual acuity. I'm looking often for things that have some contrast to them when I have to read them. For example, medication labels, things that I need to use in the kitchen every day. I want to know that I can match my visual needs to the products that I'm using. So that might be the case if there are changes in hearing or changes in your touch sensation, changes in strength, the range of motion, as I mentioned. So we're trying to match, what can we do now and want and need to do, and then what's available to help us do it. We also specifically, a lot of times, are trying to reduce stress on joints or muscles. And I'll say this is particularly the case for people who have arthritis. And Krista had asked, could we say a little bit specifically about arthritis? That's one of the common reasons why I talk about adaptive equipment, is that often we're in situations where with arthritis, you want to protect your joints from further deterioration, or you have enough pain or issues of dysfunction in your joints that you need devices to help do the things that, like simple things that you do every day, like opening jars and cans, or doing small fasteners on clothing and things like that. So that's a big reason why adaptive devices are sought. But we also sometimes want to protect areas that are prone to overuse. So that if you're a person, for example, with low back pain, we might be looking at equipment in order to reduce the strain on your back for certain things that you're doing every day. And then what's really common is that we just want to get tasks done more quickly or efficiently and take advantage of those current technologies to save time and energy for other things. So I'll hear a lot of people say things like, I really want to be able to play with my grandkids in the afternoon, or I really want to be able to go and play tennis with my friends. So I'm going to do things that save me time and energy in the morning in my getting ready routine so that I'll have some time and energy to do that. So let's talk a little bit about the characteristics of the devices and reasons why sometimes it's easy to find something and it's not quite the right fit. Is that sometimes you want to know really why is it that you need a device or want a device to help you do something. One of the most common reasons, especially when we're talking about hand function, is that we want something where the angle of force is more efficient. So in this case, I just used a vegetable peeler as an example. So if you can see the far right side of your screen, and if you can't, again, you're welcome to click on me and move me around. There's just sort of what looks like a traditional vegetable peeler. A nice one, it's got a little bit of a built-up handle to it, so it might be easier to grip. But there are some people for whom that sustained grip on something like a vegetable peeler is going to really fatigue their hand, or they're not going to be able to do it over time. And so looking for something that really changes the angle of the task. And this is a vegetable peeler from a company called Chatham that I have used quite a bit and love the functionality of it. It really has worked well for me, is that you can slide your hand into the back loop on the vegetable peeler and you keep your hand open while you're peeling, so you don't have to have sustained grip on something. This is not a device that was made specifically for people who have any sort of functional loss. It's open and available on the common market. You can find it in a lot of kitchen stores. So it's just a nice example of changing the angle to do a different task. You might also think about the weight of the object. Excuse me. One of the characteristics we look for is to reduce the weight or the heft of something so that the physical effort that you need to use it is minimized. And I showed an example here just of some adjustable wrenches that are made with open handles instead of having solid handles. So it somewhat reduces the weight of using a tool like that. Now, I have heard some people say who are used to using the regular adjustable wrenches that this is a little difficult to get used to because the head's heavier than the handle. Despite that, it's worth thinking about not just this example, but are there other examples of tools that could be lightened if they didn't have all the weight in the body of them? So not in the functional end of them, if you will, but in the body. We're also looking for objects that have properties that assist in its use. So objects that might have something like a stabilizing base or a holding assist to it. There are a lot of examples, again, in tools of things that clamp to surfaces or have vice grips that will attach them. But here are a couple of just common household items. One is a stand for a mixing bowl, and this requires both the stand and then the bowl that works with it. But I've used this particularly with people who have only the use of one hand after a stroke or after an amputation of one hand, that this stand will position the bowl in place so that they can actually empty it effectively without having to sort of wedge it against their body or figure out some other creative way to hold the bowl in place. And then the opener that you see there is mounted on a cabinet, and it basically lets a person slide a jar in of any kind and stabilize the jar. So this is a little different than the devices that are actually put on the jar lid to open. This one allows you to stabilize the jar itself, and you still use your hand strength to open the jar. We're also looking a lot of times to minimize how much we need to use our small joints. And this is, again, particularly important in the case of arthritis, but also in other, in hand paralysis. So people who might have neuropathies or again, spinal cord injuries, any reason why there's weakness that affects pinch and grip. We're looking for things that broaden the surface area, like you see in the light switch, the rocker switch at the top, or that sort of consolidate the control for something. So in the case of the faucet on the right, really common for us to see levered handled faucets these days. That's much easier for someone than needing to reach and with a precision grip turn on two faucets for hot and cold, just to be able to adjust it with a bigger part of your hand or your body rather than your small joints. And then finally, we're looking for things like contact surfaces that are enlarged and that may be more contoured to the human hand. So I just used the example of the stapler. You just see the one on the left has a little bit broader surface area that you're going to contact to do the stapling. So that takes less force from us. We get a little bit more leverage with it because we can spread out the force, versus the one on the right, which is not so different, but it's just a little bit of a smaller lever that we're pushing against. You could go to the next step and say, well, there are also electronic staplers. You don't have to push them at all. So, depending on your needs and if you want something that's electric versus manual, but in terms of a manual characteristic, this is the kind of thing we're looking for. And then beyond thinking about so much about force and strength in our hand function, you can also think about things like vision and language. How can we have visual displays that are more clear and language demands that are reduced? And I'm giving the example of some keyboards. I have been fascinated ever since the 1980s when keyboards started becoming parts of our everyday lives, that there are hundreds of kinds of keyboards out there. There are keyboards for people who type one-handed. There are keyboards for people who need to type with their hands in a vertical position instead of horizontal. In this case, I really wanted to focus on the visual components, though. The keyboard on the right has a lot of visual contrast to it. The keyboard on the left is actually the one that I use at work. I love the keyboard in terms of its touch and its functionality, but it has terrible visual contrast. So if I weren't a person who could type without needing my vision to do so, then I would have a really hard time orienting to this keyboard. So again, the choice to how much of a clear visual display do you need, and then what kinds of other characteristics might you need in the keyboard. Okay, so then we have all these options and all these reasons why we might seek adaptive equipment. And so when you're going for something, these are the kinds of conversations that I have with a lot of the folks I've worked with is, do the characteristics of the device fit the needs, abilities, and budget of the person? You can find almost anything that you want and need, but sometimes people are making really tough decisions about whether or not they're going to overspend for something that they're not going to use very much. And are there other alternatives to that? I've worked with some people who are down to the point of saying, you know, I'd rather just ask another person for help with that than spend the money on a device. Perfectly fine. That's a good social device to use. You also want to think about how difficult, challenging, or expensive it's going to be to maintain the device. And I can think about that. A lot of times I used to think about that and just think, well, that doesn't look like it would be hard to fix. But you also want to think about, can you find replacement parts easily to it? Do the replacement parts cost just as much as the original piece of equipment? That's a big one to find out. If it requires batteries, are they types of batteries that are readily available? Can you find them by, you know, going to any of your local drugstores or big box stores, or are they a specialized type that are going to cost more to replace? And also, will you need technical support to set it up or troubleshoot? And if so, is that support offered only online or only by phone? So how does the support match your needs? And I'll give you the example. My mom is 96 and is a pretty avid computer and cell phone user, but she has a really difficult time hearing and has not been successful with many types of hearing aids. So when she needs technical support for her tablet, that's only offered to her if she can call in or do that online, and neither way is very accessible for her. And so it's pretty difficult for her to get technical support for her technology until one of her children shows up to help solve the problem. So think about whether or not the support that's available matches the needs that you have. I'd also want to think, does the device have good reviews for durability? How regularly are you going to use it? And is there a good return policy? If you want to try something out and you have to go ahead and purchase it, can you return it if you can't use it? So I want to just share a few resources and then open up for questions and conversation. One of the big resources that I'd really like you to know about is the North Carolina Assistive Technology Project. Some of you may have used it before. This is a program that exists across the state. I believe at this point there are 7 different assistive technology centers. Our closest one is in Raleigh. But they have a loan service. So they own a number of adaptive devices, and those are low tech as well as higher tech devices that you can loan on a 2-week trial period. You can borrow, on a 2-week trial period. And at this point during COVID-19, they also have a way to do contactless loans, and some smaller things they will mail to you. Some other things they will do contactless pickup if you can route by their office and get them. So I've put the URL here. It's a little bit long because they're embedded within the Division of Vocational Rehabilitation, but you can also just Google North Carolina Assistive Technology Project, or NCATP, and find their resources. So that's a really nice option because there's no cost for borrowing the equipment, and you can try something out and see if it's going to work for you. The other places to try are things like your local senior centers sometimes have some equipment to try or at least look at if you can't borrow it. Occupational therapy clinics or rehabilitation clinics of different kinds. A lot of bigger hospitals are also now selling their own adaptive devices and durable medical equipment through like an in-hospital store. That's a good place to at least go sort of get your hands on something. And a couple of the bigger retail pharmacy chains carry a really nice line of devices now too. Walgreens in particular comes to mind. You know, they're not so keen on you taking something out of a package and trying it, but they will tell you what they know about the devices that they own, and you can see it in person without just buying it online. I'd say the most common thing to do is to purchase something online And I'd say if you know what it is that you want, start with the source or the manufacturer for the device. And that's not because necessarily you're going to purchase it from them, but it's helpful to know what they say about the device as opposed to what sometimes other online sources or retailers say about it. And look it up there, understand what the dimensions and the functionality are, see what their sort of suggested retail price is for it, and then see what you're finding in other places. I listed Pinterest and Amazon, and the reason I'm saying for better or for worse is that the better is how many hundreds of thousands of products they have. The worse is that sometimes it's difficult to drill down to exactly what it is you want unless you know how it's being named on that site. You know, and some people have difficulty with the business models of those. So I don't know if Pinterest and Amazon are your friends or not, but there's certainly places where you can find a lot of examples of things. There are a couple of really specialized sites. One is a company called North Coast Medical, and they make a consumer catalog called Functional Solutions. And the reason I drill down to these is because you're going to find only adaptive devices in these. You're not going to wade through lots of other products or lots of other sort of unrelated things. The same is true with a couple of online retailers, AliMed and Rehab Mart, but there are many, many more you also might consider looking at. I just put a diamond in. Again, it's not on your handouts. I kind of added it at the last minute thinking you also want to check out reviews of products sometimes from entities that aren't selling them, but are just reviewing them. Sometimes AARP does some nice reviews. Consumer Reports has a whole section that's about senior technology and senior adaptive devices. And recently I saw a 2020 report from a group called seniormatters.com. So there are places online that you also want to check and see what are other people saying about these devices. And I will give Pinterest and Amazon a little bit of a nod for that they typically have lots and lots of reviews of the products. These things like Consumer Reports and Senior Matters is also going to review the products outside of the realm of purchasing them. So just a nod to the wise to check out what you're buying as well. So I'm happy to have questions, conversation, whatever's of interest to people, if I can help in any way. And I put my contact information here. I'm also happy if you email or call me at any time. If you have a personal question about a device, I'm happy to help you problem solve a little bit. I'm very limited time at that phone number that you see listed there. During COVID time, I can pick up messages remotely, but it's not the first thing on my brain. So email's an easier way to reach me. And I'm glad to talk with you all this morning. I hope you have a really good series.
Thank you so much. I don't know if anyone has any questions. Let's see, I might. Looks like the person that you called in, Jackie, is no longer on the line, but okay, we'll swap it to us.
It looks like Happy Islander has their hand up.
Oh, okay. Did you want to type in the chat, or I could probably allow you to unmute if you want to just ask out loud. If
okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yep, this is Ed.
Hey, Ed.
Hi, Jackie.
Hi, Ed.
Hi. Yeah, I have a question. I'm going to be I'm scheduled to have next month knee replacement surgery. Mm-hmm. And so you mentioned that there are pieces of equipment for knee rehabilitation, and that there are various options, including options that we might not be aware of. So if you could explain what those options are, it would be helpful.
Yeah, so what I was referring to is that a lot of times when you're in that situation of going in for a hip replacement or a knee replacement, there's sort of a standard set of equipment that you'll likely be introduced to in the hospital, or especially if you go into a rehabilitation phase and you're working with therapists. With a knee replacement, some people need them more or less than a person with a hip replacement, but they're often devices that are going to sort of help you reach your feet while that's difficult, while the range of motion in your knee is still limited after surgery. They may suggest something to sort of help you bathe your feet, like a long-handled sponge, a reacher that's going to help you get things off the floor when it's going to be difficult to bend for them, things like that. And the reason I mentioned options is because The kit that's typically sort of shown or offered in hospitals is perfectly fine for temporary use. It's just that if you want to use it for specialized purposes, or you're a person who, you know, is thinking longer term, you might want to have a reacher. I wanted you simply to know that there are other types of things out there than the ones you get handed in the first instance after that knee surgery. You probably, with a knee, maybe introduced more to things like the reacher and something that's going to help you get socks and shoes on during the time that you're not going to be able to bend your knee as much. I will tell you too that some people don't like, well, I won't go back to it, but if you go back to the third slide, I think where it had the equipment that was for dressing, you'll see somebody using what's called a sock donner. For some people, that really is a more difficult piece of equipment to use than you would think by the way that it looks. And instead of using that, they'll simply use their reacher to put their socks on. So the other thing I would say, besides thinking you've got options for that equipment, is that you can also use it for things other than what it was necessarily intended for or described for, is that you might be able to use just one piece of equipment like a reacher to do almost everything you need. That can help you get pants on, help you get socks on, that sort of thing.
Okay. All right. And do you know, generally does the hospital or the doctor's office supply that equipment, or is that something you're expected to buy?
Yeah, so it's an interesting question, because sometimes it's still like you're buying it. If you are presented those items in the hospital, they used to be sort of incorporated into the hospital costs. And I think based on a policy a few years ago, they can no longer do that quite so readily. So they will likely demonstrate the equipment to you and then tell you where you can purchase it. And this is why a lot of hospitals, and UNC Healthcare and Duke both have sort of in-hospital shops now, where if you need something before you go home, you could purchase it right there. But typically you'd be working with a physical therapist and an occupational therapist after an orthopedic surgery like that, and they'll introduce this equipment to you and show you how to use it for the needs that you have after your knee surgery.
Okay. I'm having the surgery at the specialty hospital in Durham. Are you familiar with that?
I am. I had a friend who had some surgery done there, but I know that in her case, she actually went home and did home health therapy. And so I don't think that equipment was introduced to her there at the point of surgery, but not long afterwards when she started doing home health rehab.
Okay. I have one other question regarding the bathing options, assisted or safety options. What would you, for showers, taking showers, what would you recommend as a precautions for safe showering, you know, especially after surgery or, you know, situations like that?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So it's a great question. And I'm going to really encourage you, if you have any option, to have someone look at your specific context with you, your specific setup of your shower. That would be a great thing, because I'm going to give you some general things to think about, but you know, there are always tricks in a lot of different situations. The first thing you really want to think about is the hardest thing about it is the transition in and out of the shower or tub space, a lot of times after you've had something like a knee replacement surgery. And so you want to think about how you're going to do that safely. If you have a grab bar in place, something sturdy, the most difficult situations we see are when people have things like sliding shower doors or curtains and towel bars that are nearby, and they're tending to use those things to put their hands on to transition in. None of those things are typically mounted in a way that are really made to sustain your body weight, so that if your foot slid out from under you, your whole body weight would be reliant on that whatever you've put your hand on. So the first thing I always want to look for is, does the person have a safe way to make that transition into and out of the wet space? It's great if you can have a vertical grab bar that's placed right at the entrance to your tub or shower, and then possibly another one on the wall that's inside. And then a lot of times for something like an orthopedic surgery, like a knee or hip replacement, people are looking at seated showering for a while. And often that can be a simple stool that's not very expensive. I've even seen some people really effectively use plastic lawn chairs to put in their shower. It depends on the size of the shower or tub that you have, because you want something that's going to give you enough space to get your feet in and out. And a lot of times with a knee replacement, your knee is going to lack some range of motion for a little while as you work to get that back. And so you're going to need to be able to accommodate the length of your leg. And you don't want to crunch yourself up trying to get in and out with too big a device or a seat. Yeah, so I'm not aware of all of the resources, either from the specialty hospital or who you might be following up with rehab, but I'd say if you can get a therapist or a home health person home health nurse in to look at the situation with you, they should have some great recommendations specific to your needs.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm told they do provide a home health nurse
Great.
Post-surgery. So I appreciate what you're telling me. Thank you.
Sure, no problem. And I would say, give me a call if you get stuck in a pinch, and I will route through Krista and find me, and I will be glad to help problem solve. Rather do that than have you unsafe.
One thing that we do at the Council on Aging, and I think Dennis is on, so he can tell me whether we're still doing some of this, but I know for certain that we do have assistive equipment loans for things like shower chairs and that sort of thing. And so you can contact Wynn Fields. She can help you with that. And I'm not sure if we're still doing during COVID installation of grab bars or not, but that is the thing that we do through our minor home repair. And again, Wynn Fields at our Eastern Center, 919-542-4512 could kind of give you some answers on it if that's helpful to you.
Thank you, Krista. I'll follow up with you. Thank you.
All right, very good.
Jenny, do you know whether or not they ever authorize pre-surgical therapy visits like that to assess the situation so that they know going in what adjustments to make and what might be to change before they go in and have the surgery?
Yeah, I would check with your insurance company about that. It's becoming a little rarer just because they're considered sort of not medically necessary visits, but they're great as preventive options.
Right.
And, you know, somebody who's a skilled home modifier could do that for you as well. But thank you, Krista, for chiming in too about the Chatham resources. I wasn't sure how much to say because I didn't know what you all were doing in terms of COVID, but
That's fine, yeah.
fantastic resources. So
that's the thing. If anyone ever has a question, feel free to call and ask. I mean, it's better to ask, and we might have it for you than to not ask and you missed out because we did have something there. And we can generally point you in the right direction. All right, Andy is saying that Dorcas Thrift Shop in Cary also has things like shower stools for loan and gifting as part of their program in case we do not have one in stock at the senior center. So that is also an option.
Absolutely. And the Scrap Exchange in Durham had also started a program like that. So if what you need is not available in your typical resources, faith communities also often have loan closets.
Let's see.
Yes, it's so important. Now, Jenny, do you know whether they do knee replacements as outpatient, or is that all requiring an inpatient at this point?
A lot of full replacements are at least a sort of a 24-hour stay. We are seeing people discharged much more quickly than they used to be, and the procedures are a lot more efficient, not quite so invasive. It depends a little bit on how much of the surface of the knee you need to have replaced. If they're doing more of sort of just a partial replacement of the lower part of the knee, sometimes people are in and out in less than 24 hours. Sometimes a full knee is 24 to multiple days, depending on complications or other health conditions that might be impacting the situation. But we are seeing people return much more quickly. And the great news about that is that your knees are not typically so affected by the surgery, and that you get your range of motion and your strength back much more quickly than it used to be.
Well, and I got to give kudos to Ed because he also comes to my exercise class on a regular basis. So he is exercising those muscles to keep them strong and keep them functional. So that's really good.
Yeah, great resource.
Yes.
Did anyone else have a question? If you can type it into the Q&A, or you can use the hand raise feature and I can bring you on and you can ask it out loud if you'd like.
And I have one more question here. Jenny, we have some seniors that don't necessarily have technology to use to connect to some of these kind of virtual programs that we're doing. Do you know of any tablets or anything like that that are really straightforward? We looked at GrandPad, I think it was GrandPad, and some of those, and the one that was available through, I can't remember the name of the other one. When I went and looked for it, it was supposedly available through Target. They were all sold out as well. So I didn't know if you knew anything. I was waking up this morning and my brain was working on developing an app of how we could have something come up right on time for them and come alive, you know, a few minutes before we started a program, you know, so didn't know what might be available out there.
Well, you're mentioning most of the things that I have used in the past. GrandPad has been the most common. There was for a very short while a device called Bugster, but I looked last week and it's looking like it's not being produced anymore. I don't know if there wasn't enough demand for it. Let me look into that for you. I actually have a friend who works in an assistive technology center up in Wisconsin who's sort of onto the tablet laptop world quite a bit. So I'll ask him if he has any recommendations and I can route it back to you.
Yeah, because we're trying to fill the void between the people. I mean, we've got some people that have their tablets, some people that have their laptops, and then we have people that really at this point just have a telephone.
Mm-hmm.
And
right.
That's where they're comfortable. So and we've tried using the tablets at the center and have done some education, but once you get a lot of apps loaded or somebody else uses it, it gets really complicated really fast.
Yeah.
And so I was trying to figure out something that was really, really straightforward. Mm-hmm. And whether or not that was already out there, or whether or not you've got some connections and we can figure out how to develop something like that would be really, really amazing.
Yeah, I know it's on a lot of people's minds and a lot of people have been working on it. And unfortunately, what I had mentioned with Bugster is what happens with a lot of those is that it's possible to do it. It's possible to do sort of a straightforward receiving device, but you don't have the market for it a lot of times to be able to sustain it as a company.
Gotcha.
But there's some overlap actually in educational technology for children and making the technology that's a little bit simpler for receiving devices for adults. And so
right.
Let me go back and look into that a little bit and see what's new. I haven't kept up with it in the last couple of years, and maybe
that would be really helpful, because I've been kind of looking but can't find what I'm looking for. And we do have some contacts with Zoom. So even if it's something like that we can partner with another technology company to try to get this off the ground, but I hate to reinvent the wheel if there's something already out there.
Right, sure.
All right, so Ed, I think, has another question.
I have just to follow up with Jenny. The physician that I'm using is with Emerge Orthopedics practice, and he's a younger doctor who's trained in robotic surgery.
Great.
For knee replacement. I just wondered if you had any familiarity with that type of surgery.
Yeah, so I had robotic surgery myself, not for a knee replacement, but for abdominal surgery. And the recovery time is usually so much shorter. And, they're just fascinating to watch. I don't know, Ed, if you've been able to see, you can often find on YouTube videos of robotic surgeries. It's not everybody's cup of tea to watch a surgery, but it's interesting. And you can see how much less invasive that is, and how it allows, one of the great things about it has been the infection control, because you don't have so many human hands involved in the situation. The robots can be sterilized to the point where it's much safer for them to be sort of entering the tissue of your body. But they also are just surgeries that tend to be less invasive, and so the recovery time is less. And, if, as Jackie mentioned, you've also been doing exercises to prepare yourself for it, you probably have primed yourself for the best possible outcome.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah.
One more question, Jenny. Do you see any, what do you see coming out of COVID? Do you see more inventions coming out of COVID? Do you see more or less people coming through for therapies? What have you noticed, or what do you see coming out of this pandemic?
Yeah, well, it certainly sort of slowed down people's access to therapy for a while. I don't see people in a clinical situation. I've been seeing people more out in the community, and that's, that was sort of on an as needed basis. So that shut down pretty firmly, but we're beginning to see things open up now. I have a colleague who works in an outpatient clinic who is starting to see people both in person as well as through telehealth. The difficulty with the in-person visits are still everybody's need to stay safe with not just masks, but face shields, which sometimes makes the interaction a little bit more difficult. I will tell you that one of the things that we are dealing with quite a bit is when you wear a mask or anything over your face, that for people who have any kind of hearing impairment, it's really difficult to communicate. Another sort of adaptive device to look for is that there are face shields that are made, or masks that are made with a clear window pane in the front of them and fabric.
Oh, wow.
So that makes it a little bit easier if someone is a lip reader or just needs that little augmentation of seeing your mouth move. The other thing is we've sometimes gone to wearing just face shields instead of face shields and masks, so that, it's not as much protection for the person, but at least the communication's a little bit easier. But those are things I think we hadn't anticipated before. At first it was all about keeping people safe from COVID, but now it's about how do we function while also being safe in COVID. So I think telehealth has really jumped. Medicare right now is covering telehealth, which they did not do for a while for therapies in particular. So right now, PTOT and speech can all conduct sessions that are already basically warranted to be needed. They can be conducted via telehealth if the person on the receiving end can connect that way.
All right, so Ed has another question.
Yes, just again to follow up about the face mask. I have hearing aids in both of my ears, and trying on the mask to clip onto the ears, all kinds of problems. Taking them off, my hearing aids kept getting tied up with the mask, and so it's much better to use a mask that, for me, that I can tie on, rather than clip onto my ears and get caught up in the hearing aids.
Yeah, that's a great point. I've also heard people, even just people who wear glasses, say, then I put the band there and it gets caught on the end of my glasses and things. So I've known a couple of doctors who are actually using not just tie-on ones, but they have something attached to either end of the mask that will clip together in the back of their head. I saw somebody mock one up with a cable tie the other day, which was kind of funny. It was a little bit difficult to get off, but it worked. They were just basically able to have a band in the back of their head with the cable tie instead of the elastic around their ears. So I think it's making us all be really creative in terms of mask options.
Yeah, when you have glasses and a hearing aid, it makes it even more interesting.
Yeah. One thing, Orange County is giving away masks. You can stop at the fire department on Martin Luther King Drive and pick up free masks.
Yeah, good to know. I knew they had talked about that. I hadn't kept up with it. So they're giving them out there now.
They are giving them out.
Yeah, and I think that the Chatham Health Alliance is starting to do some mobile kind of pop-up places, and I think they're going to be doing some mask giveaways in different communities around Chatham too as well. But that's good to know.
Great.
For sure, because it's important when you go out to wear it.
And the Council on Aging has been giving out some free masks as well to its participants, to its meal recipients. So, and I know we're going to be giving them out to the people that had signed up for the senior games. So if you need some, you can also reach out to us as well.
Yeah.
Great.
All right, did we have any other questions? I know I can imagine too, right now with COVID, that for some folks who might have had people come over and help them open a jar or something, that, having these other, hi, Dr. Sullivan, Dr. Sullivan's joined us. having those other options to help open jars, help reach things when you can't have people come into the house so much for your safety, I think is definitely a good option to have.
Yeah. Well, and I know that there are lots of clever and creative people. My favorite thing about this work is to find out what people have designed for themselves. I met a woman actually in Chatham County a few years ago who had cut up old tires and made them into basically handrails on the side of her door. She nailed them, the strips of tire, into her door, and they made these great hard rubber handholds for her to get in and out of her house. So good, clever creativity coming out in hard times like COVID too. So thank you all very much for letting me talk with you today. I appreciate it.
Of
It was
course.
very informative. It was great.
Wonderful. And I just want to say, for those of you who are attendees, in the little online version of the schedule, which I don't know if you could see it, but anyway, you can click, for some of our presenters, there's handouts, and you can click right within that for your handout. And so if you wanted some of the links from the slides that Jenny had shared, you can see some of those links in there. And if you have any questions, you can definitely get in touch.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll take my lead. Thank you.
Yeah, no, okay. I was gonna, I guess, do a quick introduction here before we hand it over, although.
Do we want to do a quick movement break?
But yeah, we just need to, right now we're seeing Dr. Sullivan's screen, so.
Mm-hmm.
I could cancel this sharing real quick, and then we'll get back to it. All right, so we're gonna do a quick movement break. We've got about 5 minutes before, so that Jackie could give us a movement break. If you guys aren't familiar with Jackie, Jackie handles planning activities, exercise, all of that fun stuff. And so you've probably seen her online with our online fitness classes through the week. Jackie, take it away for our quick brain and movement break.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Well, we are glad you're here. So let's start with just rolling our shoulders backwards. So we're going to do a little bit of movement to get everybody warmed up, get everybody moving a little bit. This is really good for loosening up the shoulders. You can do this seated, you can do it sitting. Before we go too far, watch your posture. Make sure your shoulders are directly over your hips. You don't want to be like this. You want to be nice and tall and proud. Okay, that's one of my slogans, tall and proud. Okay, now let's go ahead and let's get our wrists moving. We were talking a lot about arthritis. So this movement break is really about an arthritis focus. After the next one, we'll do a little bit more brain work because that's what Dr. Sullivan is going to be talking about. So just move your fingers. Okay. Now we're going to do one we call cat claw. Okay. Cat claw, you're going to take your hands, you're going to start this way. And you're just going to bend all of the knuckles except the knuckle where your fingers hit your. And then what we're going to do, we're going to do something scary here. You're going to turn your hands out this way and you're going to open your mouth really wide. So we work our jaw and you're going to look at scary face. And then relax your hands. And just smile. Scary face. And then smile. So we're moving our face and our hands. One more time. Okay. All right. Put your hands down. Let's do those shoulder rolls again. All right. We like to have fun. If we're not going to laugh, we're not going to have fun. There's no sense in doing it. Go ahead, we put our hands up in what we call goalpost, okay? When you're at goalpost, your elbows are out straight to the side if you can. Now, if your shoulders are sore and you can only get up this far, then that's all you do, okay? Now, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna turn to the side and you're gonna pull your elbows back and you're gonna squeeze those shoulder blades together. Just do what you can, never to the point of pain. And let's exhale and bring our hands together and feel that stretch between your shoulder blades. Inhale and bring your arms back again. Exhale and bring them together. Let's do that one more time. Inhale and bring them out. And exhale and bring them together. Now go ahead and bring your arms down to your side. Roll your shoulders one more time. Okay. Now go ahead and look over your left shoulder. Get your neck over as far as you can, your chin over as far as you can, and your eyes looking behind you as far as you can. Look straight ahead. And then turn to the other side. This is great for arthritis in the neck. Again, If you've got arthritis, don't do something the doctor has told you not to do. So if you're not supposed to turn because you have severe osteoporosis, then you don't turn, okay? Now let's do a little bit with our legs. I'm gonna pull my chair back here a little bit farther since most of you may be seated. I'm gonna go ahead and sit down. And what I'd like you to do is just raise one leg a little bit and just do circles with your ankles. You'll notice that your thigh muscle gets tight as you do this. Go ahead and go the other way. Other exercises that we do during this time, we're gonna do some acting things out a little bit, switch to the other foot with other sessions, and we'll do a little bit of mind work as we do it to kind of put us into a different place, some virtual movement, okay? Now let's see if we can take and sit tall and proud and tighten those belly muscles. Just pull the belly muscles in toward the spine. Again, notice we're sitting tall and proud. Ears over shoulders, shoulders over hips, okay? And tighten that belly in, hold it, count to 5 out loud. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and relax. Now the reason we count out loud is to make sure that we're breathing. We never want to hold our breath when we're doing an exercise like that. So let's tighten it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and relax. Very good. Now let's go ahead and let's just march in place. Let's get our heart rate up a little bit. Let's add in our arms. Okay, we got about another minute till we turn this over. All right, now, as you do this, can you pretend you're climbing a ladder? Just climb a ladder. Get a little bit more movement going. All right, we want to get that blood flowing. We want to wake up that brain. We want to get that body moving because guess what? Motion is lotion for our joints, especially when we have arthritis. Now, what I want you to follow with after you're done is everybody should make sure that you have some water by you and keep drinking water while we're doing this today because we want to make sure we stay hydrated. Thank you for joining me for this movement break, and I turn it back over to Krista.
Thank you, Jackie.
You are welcome.
If you want to see more of Jackie, Jackie has exercise classes that she does for the Council on Aging on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. You can learn more about those on our website. This week, for the remainder of the week, because we're having the conference, you will not be doing those live, but you can find the recordings on our website and on our Facebook page as well. All right, so without further ado, I'm gonna introduce our next speaker. Dr. Karen Sullivan is one of only 30 board-certified neuropsychologists in the state of North Carolina. She is the owner of a private practice, Pinehurst Neuropsychology Brain and Memory Clinic. In addition to seeing patients, Dr. Sullivan enjoys educating and empowering older adults about how to take control of their brain health with scientific-based information through her I Care for Your Brain program. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Karen Sullivan.
Hello. Hey, everybody.
So glad to have you with us.
We are so glad you're here.
You guys are awesome. Can you guys see my PowerPoint slide right now or just my face?
We can see your slide and your face.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for the invitation. I feel so strongly that programs like yours are the heartbeat of the community for older adults. And I know these have been crazy times causing you to have to adapt on the fly. And so somebody's innovation and creativity is behind this conference. So I salute all of you guys so much. So as Krista said, I'm a neuropsychologist down in Pinehurst, and I travel all over the state doing talks like this to try to really bypass the brain fitness marketing industry because they have their eyes set on people over the age of 65. There's all sorts of products that aren't really worth a dime on the market today. And part of my talk is going to be really busting some of those myths that you could take a pill and have a healthier brain. It's really so much about your behavior and what you do. And so much of it relates to your cardiovascular health. So I really salute you guys for putting in a movement component to the conference, because if you're going to look to the scientific literature for what you can do to improve your brain health, time and time again, exercise, improve circulation, more blood and oxygen to your brain. It's just, time and time and time again, and you can't buy that in a pill, right? So the first thing I thought I would do was to just introduce myself to you guys. So you guys had already done that a little bit. I am from the Northeast. You might be able to tell that already from my accent. So I'm a doctor through a PhD at Boston University, and in neuropsychology, we have to go on and do 3 more years after we get that degree. So I was lucky enough to finish those at Boston VA and Harvard Medical School. I got down to North Carolina through a chance to be an assistant professor at UNC School of Medicine. And about 7 years ago, came down to Pinehurst to start my own practice, because there's really no neuropsychology presence down here, besides, in spite of the fact that so many people retire here and we have such an older demographic. So we've had a wonderfully warm, accepting experience setting up shop here in Pinehurst, and we're going really strong. But before I did all of this school stuff, I actually had a whole nother life, which was related to being a caregiver and a home health aide and a nursing assistant and an activities director and a co-director of an adult day health program, and I worked in assisted living. So really my roots are directly with people and doing one-to-one clinical care. So that really informs the type of doctor that I try to be, and really try to respect that people have 23 hours in a day besides the 1 hour that they're in my office. So I'm always mindful of the big picture and the whole person as I try to figure out someone's brain health. So we are here today because we all care about your brain, right? That's really the passion behind all older adult advocates who work in the health field. Staying sharp outranks things like Social Security reform, even physical health, as a priority for older adults. In 2013, AARP did a study and showed that over 70% of older adults said, I would like to learn about brain health from my doctor, but the truth is I'm actually learning about it from things like commercials and magazine articles, which is not okay. So I want you to kind of think critically, like, who is sponsoring these media messages about brain health, and what exactly is it that they have in mind? Is their goal really to give you objective information about your brain health, or is their goal to sell you a product? So what I'm talking about here are the supplements that say they improve memory, that they prevent dementia, computer games, and phone apps. The vast majority of these products on the market have no scientific merit and really rob you of your 3 most precious resources as you get older. You might think money is the first one, but actually the truth is I think time and hope are the worst of those manipulations. Time, because you're spending your time working at home in isolation on a computer app, that's keeping you from potentially going to the senior center. I mean, quarantine aside, we have to kind of have an exception to these difficult times. But if you're spending your money sitting there, not doing anything with your body, and feel like you're exercising this muscle up here, well, guess what? That's really much less powerful than if you got out and walked around the block, okay? The other one really is hope, and that's where I know so many of us who are passionate about healthy aging can get really upset and riled up, because a lot of times the promises that these supplements, for example, make is that they're gonna do things like reverse dementia, take away Alzheimer's disease, and the truth is none of them can do that. There is no return on the investment whatsoever. So here's some pictures of what I'm talking about. These are all real products, okay? So senior moment memory loss mints are a real thing. You've probably all seen things like Prevagen and Lumosity, and now we even have, you know, things like brain dust, which is something that's sold at Nordstrom's, and you put it on your granola in the morning, and the whole idea is it brings your brain back to life. There's a lot of herbs and kind of natural things like coconut oil and turmeric. And if you look in the lower left-hand corner, you can even see that Purina has gotten into the supplement game. So your dog can have a brighter mind if you give them the Pro Plan Purina Bright Mind food. So of all of these supplements and natural remedies, there really is only one on this page that even has a shred of scientific evidence. There's one that had to undergo more rigor, more scientific scrutiny than any other one on the page. So I'll leave it to you guys to decide which one that is, okay? So that might surprise you. It's actually the dog food. The dog food has more regulations from the US government than any of these other products on here. And in part, that's because supplements in about the mid-1980s really created a whole market in and of themselves where they got to bypass the FDA, and they became, through strong lobbying and money, they really became their own entity. So all that they have to prove is that they are relatively safe. They don't have to prove efficacy in any way, shape, or form. So this one here, Prevagen, is probably the most popular brain health supplement on the market. Every year they make about $165 million, okay? The active ingredient is supposed to be a protein from jellyfish that is to improve memory and reduce age-related impairment. I had someone recently tell me, why a jellyfish? Shouldn't they use elephants? Because elephants have good memory? But I don't know, whatever reason. The price of this stuff varies wildly, which is really interesting to me. So you can either get it for $24 at a place like Walmart, or all the way up to $68 if you go to a natural food store. In 2017, the Federal Trade Commission and the New York State Attorney General finally caught up with them and charged the marketers with making false and unsubstantiated claims. So because the way supplements work, the only way you can really get them on the hook is through their marketing. You can't get them on the hook for selling something that in reality doesn't work, because you're really not making any promises that it actually works. So what the complaint alleged is that the main study that they were using to sell Prevagen, you know how they always say something like clinically proven, they basically showed that their compound didn't work any better than a placebo to improve cognitive function. And this whole idea of clinically proven basically means that they give people free samples of their product, and then they call them in a few weeks and say, how did you think that product improved your memory? And if you think it works, we'll be happy to send you a gift certificate or an Amazon gift card. So people are very highly motivated to come through and say that it works. There's also the very real power of the placebo, where so many of us would love to think that memory could be improved as easily as taking a pill. So what they wound up saying in their complaint is that the marketers of this product preyed on the fears of older consumers, and they forgot one critical thing, that their claims actually have to be backed up by real scientific evidence. The marketing for Prevagen is a clear-cut fraud. So as much marketing as you all have seen about Prevagen in these last few years, I'm wondering how many of you listening have actually heard this story. It's really something that's been buried. And when you start to open your eyes to all of this marketing to older adults, what you start to realize is how embedded the sources of information in the media are with advertising. And so there was a 60-minute special on a couple of years ago where they followed a woman over the course of 10 years who had had Alzheimer's. And it was terrifying. And the first commercial, after all of the really horrible negative images about Alzheimer's disease, was for Prevagen. And so it's very easy. We don't want to be, you know, conspiracy theory about these kind of things, but the truth is there is a very clear relationship between marketing and what we perceive as news. The next one is Lumosity. Some of you might have heard of this. They have 50 million users. They make about $44 million per year. And again, in 2016, they were fined by the Fed. So they were given a $50 million penalty for false advertising. But they actually cried poor and said that they couldn't possibly pay that fine. And so they were let off with just a $2 million payment. And what they actually had to do was to go onto their website and to change their words on the website and how they described it. So again, the Federal Trade Commission says you don't have the science to back this up. So there's really 6 problems with this so-called brain fitness industry. The first one, which could really be a talk in and of itself, is that they really exploit anxiety about dementia. Now, dementia is no walk in the park. We all know that. We've all had our hearts broken. Most of us in this human services of aging field are here because we've loved someone who has had dementia. But we also know that a part of dementia is really how it is portrayed in the media. So people with dementia are not treated very well. I mean, all you have to do is pay attention to what's happened in nursing homes throughout COVID-19 to know how little our society really values people in that predicament. And if you start to pay attention to the marketing for these products, a lot of times they use this fear and anxiety that we all have about losing our mind to their benefit. The next one is that they oftentimes treat brain health as if it's separate from other types of health. So as if your brain is a standalone organ. And part of what I was commending you all for at the beginning of this talk was incorporating movement. So how can we separate physical health from brain health? We can't separate mental health. You can't be totally depressed and completely stressed out and have a healthy brain. That's just not the way it works. This idea that one pill or one game could have an impact on something as abundantly complex as the brain is just crazy. I mean, even though I have been studying the brain technically for, oh my goodness, over 15 years, I still feel like I read things every single day that completely blow my mind that I didn't know. So it is probably the most complex thing that we can really wrap our heads around besides the solar system, perhaps. And there's no way one tiny little supplement is possibly going to do it. The other one is that none of these smart drugs for the brain have passed any clinical trial. And what's even more concerning actually is we don't really even know their harm. So there's been no studies comparing, for example, how Prevagen interacts with something commonly given in old age, like a high blood pressure medication. A lot of times the way these brain health supplements work is that they're really a stimulant, and they actually have caffeine in them or green tea, and they kind of make you a little bit more kind of amped up, and your concentration improves. And when you are focusing better, you are able to make more memories of things that happen in your immediate environment. But what we don't know is how do those stimulants interact with other medications? The other way these meds typically work, or these over-the-counter supplements typically work, is that they're actually blood thinners. And we have no concept of how, if you're taking Eliquis, how does that interact with some of these drugs? What if you're taking fish oil and an aspirin and one of these drugs? Now you've got 3 potential things thinning your blood. And so if you have a little tiny bit of a fall, and maybe you were just going to have a little bruise under your hand, now you've got a ton of blood under the surface. And you know, when it happens in our hand, we can see that. Well, what happens if you fall and you have a little bit of a bump to the head? It could take something that would have been just a little bit of misfortune and maybe turn it into something that can actually be a medical emergency. The next one is actually my favorite, and this really gets into the wonderful organizations behind today's talks, is that the brain health industry really likes to ignore the impact of social health. And why is that? I think it's because it's hard to find products that they can get behind that belief. So I always love to cite this one study that was done, gosh, about 15 years ago now. So some of you might remember when crossword puzzles were all the rage, right? Do crossword puzzles. And of course, it's better than nothing, better than being passive and allowing information to just come to you. Anything you do with your brain that's active, where you have to act on information, is always better than not. But what they were really measuring in that famous study it was all based on was people who had gotten together at a senior center, and they mistook the idea that the getting together would have any impact on the cognitive function. So they repeated that study, and they actually had people do crossword puzzles alone at home, followed them over time, and there was no reduction of dementia over time at all. So the whole idea was, it was the socialization, it was the complexity of getting together, having to give back and forth in conversation with people. And that's why I do so many of my talks at senior centers or continuing care retirement communities, because I believe so much that as we get older, the social world can actually get further and further away from us. But the job of those of us who care about older adults is to actually bring the world closer to these folks, right? And so if we are home alone and we can't drive at night anymore because of age-related vision issues, or many of our friends aren't well enough to get together anymore, we as a society, as a community, have to provide opportunities for people to get together, or people's brain health will be on the line. What really concerns me is that the loudest voice in brain health is related to corporations. And that really is at the heart of why I do these talks, because I felt if I know better, then I have a responsibility to get out there and to tell people what real science-based brain health looks like. Okay, so now we're going to transition a little bit into talking about how exactly is it that they sell their products, right? So what is the sales pitch all about with these people? Well, the first one, I kind of alluded to it before, is anxiety, not even about dementia. they actually like to take normal age-related changes in the brain and pathologize them, right? So normal things that happen to people even throughout life, never mind as they get older, and they really like to make them scary and make people think they're kind of at the end of the tipping point of going over into dementia. Okay, so many normal memory complaints of older adults are as follows. The first one is what we're going to call roomnesia. Okay, you've all heard of amnesia, right? So amnesia is the clinical term for memory loss. Roomnesia is you walk into the kitchen and you have no memory of why you came into that room. Like, how many times does that happen to everybody, right? So the whole idea is that it's related to distraction. From point A to point B, something else happens, a bird comes in the bird feeder, you know, your phone rings, you think about how, you know, I need to go get baking soda if I'm gonna make that cake. And that's really all that is. If that's the only thing that's happening to you, it's really nothing to worry about. But in the commercials, once you're now a sophisticated consumer, you're going to really tune into these messages and see how many times they take these normal things and make it a problem. The next one is parkingnesia, okay? They would love you to think that when you come out of Walmart and you can't find your car, that that's really something to get worried about and need to take their supplement. Well, that actually happens to people of all ages. I know a clinical scientist at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston, and all he does is study this phenomenon of not being able to find your car. And I read his research, and it comes down to really three interesting things. The first one is, as you're parking your car, are you in a mindful state, or are you already in the grocery store thinking about what you're gonna get? So you kind of go on autopilot as soon as you pull into the parking lot, right? The next thing is that a lot of cars nowadays actually look alike. Most cars are white and silver. And when I think back on the cars that I've had over the last 5 years, I've had a white car and I've had a silver car. The next one is, when we go in the store, we are so bombarded by images from the outside, so many products on the shelves, and we're really overwhelmed internally because we're making all of these decisions. So when we come out of the grocery store and we're faced with the sea of car, we actually have something called decision fatigue. Our brain is tired, it wants a break. And so making another cognitive effort to figure out where the car is often, it's a little bit too much, and we need to rev up a little bit and really focus to find the car. And this is the most common cognitive complaint of normally aging older adults, is what is your name again disorder. If someone tells you, I know the face, I can't remember the name, and that's all it is, it's really nothing to worry about. And one interesting finding is, the smarter you are, the higher your IQ throughout your whole life, the more painful and frustrating this symptom is. And in part, it's because you have no coping skills for this thing not working in a split second, right? And there's so much social pressure on us to remember everyone's name that then we have anxiety and we feel embarrassed, right? So that in and of itself is really not a big deal. The big deal comes when we judge it harshly, and then we start avoiding social situations because we don't want to be faced with, being embarrassed. And that is a bigger hurt to the brain, the stop going out, the stop being social, than just simply not being able to call up someone's name quickly. So if we kind of look at a graph of normal aging to dementia, we can really see that everyone experiences slight cognitive changes as we get older. And then we have a period for most people who go on to have dementia, something called mild cognitive impairment. And this means you are having more cognitive issues than is normal for you, but they're not really affecting what we call your activities of daily living. So there's really three areas that we look at as neuropsychologists to really think about how everyone's doing in terms of their function. So the first one, and probably the most sensitive area, is money. Financial management. If somebody can balance a checkbook, keep a spreadsheet of, investments, and really be doing that well, it's extremely unlikely that you would meet the criteria for dementia. The other one is remembering to do your medication regimen. And the final one is driving. Okay, so to have a diagnosis of dementia, you have to have an impairment and need help with your money, your meds, or your driving. So in normal cognitive aging, there's really four things that we know happens to normally aging people. The first one is our vision and our hearing start to decline. That's why it's absolutely critical to keep up with your vision appointments and to have your hearing evaluated and use a hearing aid if you need one. If we can't see or hear something, we're giving the brain kind of degraded information to process. And that in and of itself, I've seen many people come to see me and they test horribly with memory when there's background noise, but as soon as we just take away all of that and we can kind of bypass the hearing loss and just have them one-on-one in a room with someone speaking loudly, their memory is completely fine. So that's part of the beauty of a neuropsychological evaluation, is we kind of pull away some of those things that can kind of cloud things up. Next one is our ability to multitask decreases. So if you used to be able to have the TV on and write your bills out at the same time, you might notice that that isn't as easy as it once was. There is a slowness in recall of all kinds. So many people tell me, I know it, I just can't find that file as quickly as I used to. And like I said before, word finding difficulties, especially for proper nouns. So remember, the key with normal aging is that these changes are mild and they don't interfere with your everyday life. So we always want to take a positive approach to aging. That's one of the things that bugs me, is if we do pay attention to the media, aging isn't exactly held up and kind of exalted, right? So many brain functions do not change at all with age. Of course, as people live longer, they accumulate more wisdom and information that younger adults have a much harder time seeing. So as we get older, we know that our ability to actually focus on things remains, our verbal comprehension remains, our judgment remains, our vocabulary increases, and interestingly, our social cognition increases. So what that means is we can handle people better than we did as younger adults. And I look forward to that happening. So probably the number one question I get as a neuropsychologist is, what exactly is dementia? How is Alzheimer's related to dementia? If you have Alzheimer's, do you have dementia? If you have dementia, do you have Alzheimer's? So dementia is an umbrella term that simply means that the person has had a significant drop in their ability to think, remember, reason, again, to the extent that it interferes with your everyday life in those three areas, right? Money, meds, and driving. So this happens because once healthy brain cells in the brain stop working or they die and they can't communicate with other brain cells. Dementia is caused by different diseases that happen in the brain. So again, thinking of our umbrella term here, we have so many different things that cause dementia. So if you look onto me, the left-hand side of my umbrella, these are actually different diseases that happen in the brain that can cause dementia. But if you look on my right, there's actually a list of things that can cause what looks like dementia, but is actually treatable and reversible. And again, this is why it's so critical to go to your PCP, talk to them about your memory concerns, ask for a referral to a neuropsychologist, because what if it really is related to vitamin deficiency? What if it's a UTI that you don't even know? UTI symptoms change as we get older. You don't necessarily, that's a urinary tract infection. We don't necessarily have pain with urination with UTIs as we get older. What if it was really as simple as just taking an antibiotic or getting your blood sugar a little bit more under control? People really deserve to have that level of scrutiny with their memory complaints. So in 2014, a group of really smart people got together across the world and wrote a letter to these brain fitness programs and basically called them out on the carpet and said, you're making exaggerated and misleading claims that are not based on science. And they concluded the letter by saying, our biggest concern is that older adults are making choices, both about how they spend their money and how they spend their time. Based on this information, it's not well grounded. It can feel that people are being exploited. So the question then becomes, why did this $8 to $10 billion industry really take hold? Well, there's a few different reasons. One is we just have more older adults, right? Medicine's gotten better, we live longer, and so age is the #1 risk factor for dementia. Doesn't mean you're inevitably going to get it, but what it does mean is if you, for every decade you live older than 70, you have a higher and higher risk of developing dementia. We don't really talk enough about the aging brain. People don't know as they get older what's normal and what's not normal. That's why we're here today. There's a general lack of access to scientifically based brain health information. Again, that's why I'm here. I really want to be a place people can come and trust with objective information. If you want to know something about your brain, most people go to Dr. Google. That's not exactly the most reliable source. I know many of you will agree with me with this. There is a lack of clinicians with expertise in aging. For as many older folks as we have in Pinehurst, we really maybe have 1 or 2 doctors that kind of identify as geriatricians, but there's really not one that their bread and butter is aging, and that's what they're an expert at. So that's very unfortunate. Again, I know many of you will appreciate this one. We have a lack of face-to-face time with our medical providers. If you have to go into primary care and you see them once every few months and you get 10 minutes for a follow-up, the average follow-up appointment is 7 to 10 minutes in a major medical institution. Chances are you're going to talk about the things that are more obvious first, right? Physical things, things people can see, right? Things like memory, anxiety, grief, these things don't necessarily get brought up because there's limited time, and also they're delicate topics. We need to make people feel comfortable before they can actually talk about these things. And probably the biggest one, and this is actually a positive, is that there's been huge advances in the field of neuroplasticity. So basically, we've done a lot of animal and human studies to know that we really do have the power to change our brain as we get older. So just quickly looking at these 2 cages here, I want you to just look at the one rat who lives all by himself, and he's got no toys in there, and all he's got in his little water bottle is water. Very boring. And then I want you to look to the other cage and look at that rat in there having all sorts of fun with his friends, and there's toys in there, and in those water bottles there's milk in one and there's some juice in the other one. A lot of scientists study rats to get insights into the human brain, and unfortunately they sacrifice the animals at the end of the experiment, and when they look at their brain cells under a microscope, you can see the difference in the health and the robustness the brain cells of the rats who were all alone in a cage versus the ones who lived in an enriched environment, okay? The stronger your brain cells are as you get older, the more they can withstand the diseases that cause dementia. So the question is, do you want to live your life in the cage by yourself with just one boring little thing of water and no stimulation and no friends and no cognitive stimulation and activity? No, you want to be over there with the wheels and the ladders and the friends and the juice, right? So we can use that to inspire ourselves. So the power to influence brain health as we age really is justified. The problem, though, is that their methods are really wrong. So what we know as brain scientists is that as we get older, successful aging is really due to a complex interaction between our genes and our environment. Your genes, you don't have much control over, but what we know is your environment, you have a lot of control over. So really the only way to achieve true brain health, I said this at the beginning, is related to behaviors that are driven by you. You actually have to do them. But my concern as I started to develop this education program was who's telling you what to do that you can trust. So it's really a dance between lowering your risk factors. There's a certain number of things, I'm going to tell you those in the next slide, that if you do them, if you have those medical conditions, it really increases your risk of getting dementia. And you can do something called increasing your cognitive reserve. That's really making those brain cells more healthy and more robust. So there's 2 types of risk factors for less than optimal health as we get older. What's awesome is that there's only 2 that you can't change, okay? But there's 15 things that you actually can do as we get older. So the 2 things you really can't do anything about are your age and the specific genes that you might have in your DNA that might cause you to develop dementia. The next one, look at all of these things that influence brain health that we have a lot of control over. And I've actually ranked these so the worst ones are at the top and the least influential ones are at the bottom. So the first thing I want you to notice is look at the first 4 things, okay? Hypertension, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol, and untreated sleep apnea. Those are all related to blood flow and circulation. That is why the exercise piece is so important, because brain cells are fed by blood, which brings in the oxygen and the glucose. If you can't get blood to different organs because there's blockages or the blood vessels are damaged, then you're going to have damaged brain cells. That's just the way it is. The very last one, though, I want to make a point on that, is low mental stimulation. If you just listen to the brain fitness industry, what would they tell you is the most important thing? They would tell you keeping your mind active is the most important. Now, granted, it makes my top 15 list, but unless you're doing all the other things on the list first, the truth is, don't really spend too much time doing those things. It's so much important to make your cardiovascular health a priority, make sure you're treating vision loss, getting hearing aids, on top of the medications you take, making sure you're not drinking too much, getting enough exercise, diet, social isolation, depression, and low mental stimulation. So we could spend a whole series of lectures talking on each one of these things, but I just wanted to give you the list for this talk so that way people could reference it in the future. So before I said something called cognitive reserve, because you're trying to do this balance between lowering the risk factors but increasing your resistance to dementia. So this was really based on a series of studies looking at Alzheimer's disease, where over 25%, so 1 in 4 people in the study in real life when they were living had perfectly fine short-term memory. But when they passed away, they donated their brain to science. And under the microscope, the scientists found that they had Alzheimer's disease. They had the plaques and tangles, but they didn't show it in real life. They didn't have the clinical syndrome of Alzheimer's, which is a fascinating insight. So that means you can have it in your brain, but if your brain is strong enough, if it's well connected enough, if you've put enough in your brain bank, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that we can buffer the impact of dementia. So he says things like your education, the type of jobs you had, the more complex and the more you've worked with people, the stronger your brain is, your socioeconomic status, and your participation in mentally stimulating activities, especially early on, make a stronger brain, a more connected brain, and this increases your resistance. So it's good to be grateful for your things like piano lessons. If you grew up in a house where they spoke other languages, it turns out that really helps your brain as you get older. So again, look at these 2 different brain cells. Which one would you want as you get older? You want the puny, spindly one, or do you want the really strong one that's got a lot of roots and arms? So what's so important as we wrap up is that there's no age limit for increasing cognitive reserve. And I wanted to give you a list of things, proactive things that you can do to build a stronger brain. So these are not in particular order. The first one is engagement in complex mental tasks. So what you want to think about when you're engaging your brain is finding what I call the sweet spot. So what the sweet spot means is it's not so easy that you can blow through it, but it's not so hard that you give up. You can almost feel when you're, I do many things where I feel like this is the maximum level of my intelligence. This is the hardest, I can't think about this anymore. This is it, I'm at the limit. I've reached my wall. That's when you're growing new dendrites on brain cells. That's when you're really getting the circulation to your brain. You wanna always be making things harder and harder. So if you like crosswords, if you like Sudoku, challenge yourself to go up to the next level of difficulty. The next one is higher education, taking continuing ed courses, listening to an online conference about healthy aging. Yay, you're doing something for yourself today. Frequent interpersonal contact, even if you can't be together in life right now, Zoom, FaceTime, social distance. It's so important that we see faces. There's a lot of things that are built into the human brain that are just for perceiving human faces. And if we don't get faces, we're not getting our basic human needs met. And probably the most important one, and I know Charlotte will appreciate this, is that moderately intense exercise, especially mixing it up. There was a great study that came out a few years ago that suggested that dance was one of the best exercises for the brain. And why they think that is because you're doing 2 things at once with dance. You're doing something physical, but you're also doing something cognitive. You're remembering steps, you're coordinating. And so the brain really loves when we pull from multiple areas of stimulation. So I'm working with one retirement community down here in Moore County, and they want to revamp their exercise room. So that way, when someone's on like a treadmill, they also can be working on computers to do things like word search or solving puzzles. So that idea of like dual task stimulation is kind of the cutting edge right now of brain science. The next one is what you eat matters. The only thing you need to know about a healthy brain diet is to focus on anti-inflammatory. Processed foods, foods with a lot of sugar and preservatives really can flare up the brain, and we don't want that. Again, because if you think of the health of your blood vessels being one of the most important things for your brain, if there's only a limited amount of space where the blood can get through in a healthy blood vessel, and now we close it up a little bit because of inflammation, just less blood and oxygen and glucose to the brain, and that's the opposite of what we want. One of the last ones is low stress, positive moods. When we are stressed out, we release all sorts of steroids into our bodies that really cause us to have inflammation. We don't want that. And the final one is high quality sleep, especially REM sleep. If you are not sleeping well, it's really an important thing to prioritize and talk to your doctor about, because it has a huge impact on your brain health. So in conclusion, I just want to leave you with this idea that we really have a responsibility as medical providers to do better in terms of people's brain health as they age. It's very important that we all work together to reduce anxiety about normal cognitive aging. So if someone says, you know, I can't learn that. What do you want from me? You know, I'm too old for something like that. Those are myths. We have to make people not talk like that. It's too negative. We really have to work together to decrease stigma about dementia. Again, that's a whole other talk and probably the thing I'm most passionate about, but we talk about people with dementia poorly. We ignore people who have dementia in many, many, many different ways. And it's just really important that we do better, not only for those people, but it really creates the whole problem of fearing brain health as we get older. It's really important that we talk to older folks about these risk factors that they can do something about and how to build a bigger brain, better brain, and really important to inform them about the threat of these supplements. So many people are just, again, wasting their time, their hope, and their money. And empowering people with evidence-based brain health recommendations that come from scientists and not marketers, I think is really important. So for anyone out there who thought this was interesting or they might want to learn more, if you're a Facebook person, every Wednesday at 6 o'clock, if you go on my Facebook page called I Care for Your Brain, I do a free brain health lecture. On anything, I'm like a DJ. People send me requests. If there's anything out there somebody would like me to research and talk about, I'm happy to do that. We also have a website, icareforyourbrain.com, where we have all sorts of lectures and webinars. And if you're interested in finding out more about this stuff, by all means. And finally, here is my email. Some people like to send me email. I can't answer personal medical questions, but if there's anything generally related to the brain, I would welcome that. So thank you guys so much for listening. I hope that you learned some new things and maybe even felt more motivated to do some of those good, healthy brain behaviors. Now I need a drink.
That was wonderful. That's wonderful. I'm going to go ahead and stop your sharing just so we can kind of come back
Sure.
and see if anyone had any questions. Andy says, thanks, very interesting and informative.
Cool.
I did have one thing to say real quick. If you're tempted to spend money on those supplements,
Yeah.
just remember, we have free programming online that you can join us with that's of no cost to you. But if you desperately still want to spend money, you're welcome to donate it to us at the Council on Aging.
There you go.
Our program's going. So if you're like, oh, I want to spend some money, we'll take it.
That's so funny.
But yeah, the online programming, and also I think too, and this is maybe a testament to Jackie as well, beyond just doing the exercise programs. I know that one of the things that we do, and you mentioned sort of at the end, is that you're not too old to learn new things. And we really want to applaud all the seniors who have been, working to learn the technology to get on with us. I mean, it's not just the benefit of coming on for the exercise and the communication, but they also are learning new technology.
Oh my God, absolutely. And once you understand things like Zoom, I mean, the whole world can open up to you. There are all sorts of lectures that are happening online. If you find a friend or a family member who does it too, I think it's really saving a lot of people from isolation and loneliness right now, but it is a little intimidating on the front end. So anyone who signed on for this, awesome job.
Yeah. And so we have a question from Ed. Ed has raised his hand.
Yes, hi, Dr. Sullivan, thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Ed. How you doing?
I'm good. Thank
Good.
you. Thank you very much. It's an excellent lecture. I really enjoyed it. And your slides are very well done and simple, which is good.
Thank you.
I'm looking at this one slide, advances in the field of neuroplasticity.
Mm-hmm.
And at the picture of the rat impoverished environment.
Yeah.
And I'm picturing myself as this COVID impoverished environment in my home, right? And stuck with, it's scary at my age, 76. So it's like, it's really unknown what interactions are going to do, for example, the things that I used to do, I can't really, like I used to be a volunteer with the American Cancer Society, driving, other volunteer work I can't do at the moment, playing bridge, often I can't do that, et cetera, et cetera.
But Ed, here's the thing though, here's the thing. That impoverished brain cell was that rat's whole life, okay? That wasn't just, 4 months of quarantine or even 2 years of not being able to get out and do. It takes a lifetime. So it's a very, very, very cumulative thing. So I would venture to say that no one has had any long-term brain damage from the quarantine. But what we do want to use that image, you know how like a picture is worth 1,000 words, right? So use that picture in your mind. If you're not feeling motivated to get on Zoom with a friend, if you don't feel like getting on your sneakers and walking around the block, if you don't feel like making a good choice when you eat, right? You're dipping into the fudge stripes for the second time in one afternoon. That's the image I want you to have in your mind, because it is motivating, because it's stark, right? It's depressing when you see that. Nobody wants a brain that looks like that, but that's not what's happened to you so far. It's the choices you're gonna make, in the next 1 to 2 decades that are going to shape your aging brain. So now that you know better and you know how important multiple types of stimulation and connection is, try to use it in a way that will motivate you to want to push through when you sometimes might not feel like making a better choice. You know what I mean?
I think I know what you mean. For example, I was active with OLI, the Duke University classes for retirees, taking many courses over many years. And then of course that's not on anymore, but they are doing Zoom courses. So I've been signing up for their Zoom courses.
Awesome.
Which is fine, but honestly, the same thing with bridge. There are Zoom bridge games. You don't get the kind of social interaction.
Oh, you don't.
You know what I mean?
I know.
It's
and that's what's so awesome about things like senior centers is that there's people whose whole job is to just figure out how to keep you socially connected. So I really echo what Krista said, which is lean on these guys. Make sure you're really taking advantage of everything that they offer, because it's really there to support you. It's a very thoughtfully designed part of our society, and thank goodness, I mean, we don't have nearly enough funding for it, but it is something that's available free to you for being tax-paying American. So really try to take advantage of it.
And let me just add another little bit on that. I don't have the background, obviously, that Dr. Sullivan has, but I have been affected by dementia in my family's life.
Yeah.
I've worked in a senior living community where I worked in a dementia unit. So over the years, I have tried to accumulate as much information as I can about brain health. And that's why I really wanted to invite Dr. Sullivan here to bring us the information that she presents just so well and so passionately. And I try to take all the things that I've learned over the last decade and incorporate that into the programming that we do at the senior center. We may not be perfect in how we implement it, but we really have that as a main focus. So we work on the socialization part. When we create the calendar, we create the movement, We create the education. We create the games. You know, we do play the bingo. We do try to keep people, and we do the bingo more now. It is brain stimulating, but it's the social environment that we're incorporating into it because we are doing it over Zoom. So we have had wood turning classes, which is something that's been amazing that Alan is doing. We have science with Alan. We're working on possibly a science camp in August. So we're trying to incorporate all those things in. When I do exercises, you hear me say, this is good for the brain. I continue to take classes to learn how to exercise for the brain. So that's why, Ed, we're really proud of what you are already doing. We want you to stay engaged. That's why we want everyone to stay engaged. That's why we also asked the questions to the previous presenter about how do we reach out to the people that only have a phone?
Yes, yes.
And that's one of the things we put focus on. We now call out to people to get involved so that they don't even have to call the multiple numbers,
Right.
you know?
Right.
So we really are passionate about doing that kind of thing.
And
So,
in some ways, maybe this is a good note to leave on. I actually have a patient in 8 minutes. Is if you really just want to simplify everything that I said, it's really making the choice between being passive and being active, being engaged. So a lot of the research, if you really just boil it down, the people that do well as they get older go to information, they seek out things, they engage with things. It's the, you know, what's so crappy about this television device society that we have is everything comes to you and your brain gets very lazy and it's prepackaged and it's just perfectly put in there for you. That's not what the brain wants. That's not normal. We are really meant to be, we're interdependent beings. So if you have to think of your day, just really try to think less passive, more active. It's as simple as that in all ways, you know?
awesome.
Thank you so much. And I know you've gotten some, as people have said, another excellent presentation. Thank you. Thank you for presenting. Very informative. Val had wanted to know what time your Facebook Live talks are on Wednesday, and I said at 6 p.m. Is that correct? And then I've got your...
Yep. Right now I'm actually focused on tremor disorders. And so if anyone has essential tremor or something called orthostatic tremor, where it's a unfortunate situation where you can't stand very well, but you can walk. And so I try to really meet the unmet needs of the brain health community. There's so many people out there who have a very real situation, but they understand about this much. And so I usually tend to focus on different groups. I focused on stroke a lot about a year ago and wrote a stroke recovery guide. So sometimes we do broad questions like the power of music for the brain. That's a huge thing. I'm sure you guys incorporate into your programming. That's amazingly stimulating for the brain. You can really, that's a great example of something where it could be passive and you could just take it in. And sometimes that is important to relax, but you can also make music something that you can engage with and provoke memories, remember lyrics, sing along to melodies. There's just so many different things related to music. So basically we've been doing those free brain health lectures on Facebook on Wednesdays for almost 3 years now. And we have about 10,000 people who follow us from all over the world. And it's really the most rewarding thing ever because people are, you know, living in Sri Lanka and have no access to a neuropsychologist, or living in northern South Dakota and they have to drive 300 miles to see a brain health doctor. So my whole thing was Facebook is free. I can just commit to my service, you know, part of my life.
And so Val, so I know you have to run, but Val had one quick question. She raised her hand. Go ahead, Val.
Oh, hi. I was very pleased to hear you mention essential tremors.
Oh, yeah.
I have essential tremors, and it has manifested primarily. I'm a right-handed person, but the tremors are primarily in my right hand. So over the last, say, 15 years, I have become left-handed. But it's difficult to do because my writing with my left hand is still not good.
Oh, yeah.
But just to hear someone else talk about that,
oh my God,
glad to hear that.
If you go on the Facebook page, or then all my lectures are uploaded to YouTube. I probably have about 6 or 7 half-hour to 45-minute free lectures on all about essential tremor. And in fact, I'm starting to do webinars on my website, and our first webinar was on essential tremor. And if you go to the website, you can see it on there. And it was 4 hours of information because so many people have ET, but don't know anything about it. And we talked about kind of psychologically how to live alongside of it. So me and a colleague of mine, Dr. Renfro, we shared that 4 hours together. It was amazing. We had 72 people from all over the world do it. It was amazing.
Okay, thank you.
Check out the page. You'll probably find a lot of stuff that might be helpful.
I will do that. Thank you very much.
Okay, you guys, thank you so much.
Thank
Okay.
you.
I hope you guys have a great rest of your conference.
Thank you.
Thank
so
you.
much.
Care. Bye.
That was wonderful. And I did put the link to her Facebook page in the chat, and then her slides are in your handy dandy program. Jackie's going to give us another brain and movement break. Thank you.
All right, good morning again, everybody. Wasn't Dr. Sullivan amazing?
I love
That's the second time I've heard her speak. I'm just really amazed by it. So what we're going to focus on this time is we're going to focus on, you can do the seated or you can do the standing. Again, take your pick. If you've been sitting too long, remember when you go to stand up, the best way to do it is feet shoulder width apart, nose over toes. So you put your nose over your imaginary line between your toes. Weight on the heels, lift yourself up, okay? Let's sit back down again, and let's get back up again. Nose over toes, weight on the heels, and lift on up. Oh, tighten those thighs. Tighten those thighs, make them work. Tighten those glutes, make those work. All right, so now we're gonna do a little bit for work in the brain. So what I want you to do is I want you to kick one foot then the other. And again, if you're a full risk, stay in the chair, okay? Now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna work on building a bridge between the two hemispheres of the brain. And we're gonna do that by, as you move your right leg, use your left arm and crisscross it across the midline of your body, okay? Same thing the other way. So it's like you're walking, but you're making X's with your body. Because what happens, if you've been to my classes, you know that you have two hemispheres of your body. And when you cross the midline of your body, you're actually making new connections between the two sides of that brain. So we're building connections just by going across the middle part of your body, okay? So now what, if you can, besides just having your arms down this high, bring them up to shoulder height, okay? Now, because we're moving and we're increasing the blood flow, guess where that increased blood flow is going? To the brain, okay? So we are helping our brain. We're increasing the blood flow. Now, can you raise that a little bit higher? So we're diagonally up, okay? Feel how good that feels. Your heart is pumping, your legs are moving, your arms are moving, and your brain is creating new brain cells. Now, let's go back to just a regular march. And I want to do two things at once. I want to do a little bit of multitasking here. I want to watch the time. So what I want you to do is we're going to focus on doing things with the opposite hand. If you are primarily a right-handed person, I want you to use your left hand, okay? Now, so whatever your non-dominant hand is, I want you to brush your hair. Brush your hair with your non-dominant hand, okay? Brush it all the way back, all right? If you're a lady or you're a man who wears chapstick, go ahead and use it to put your chapstick on, your lipstick on. All right? Go ahead and pretend you're brushing your teeth with your opposite hand. You're still marching, okay? So you do those upper teeth. Imagine cleaning those upper teeth. You turn the toothbrush upside down. Do the other side. Do the inside of your teeth. The inside of the front of the teeth, front teeth. Inside of the back teeth. Make that hand move in all those different directions because that's making new connections in the brain. All right. Now take that same non-dominant hand and wash down this arm. Wash it down. Okay. Wash your neck. All right. Wash your belly. All right. See how far you can bring that arm up around your back and do your back. Okay. Now, just to be equal, let's go ahead and do the other arm. We don't want to, because the other thing that's really neat about this is when you touch your body like this, you are stimulating your brain. And if you were to see your brain through your belly,
All right. Now go ahead and bring this one up and do the top of your back on this one too. What you would see if you put your brain in an MRI right now is your brain would be lit up because it's getting so much stimulus from your nervous system. You do the other way. All right, roll those shoulders like we did to start with the other exercise class. All right, I'm just watching my time. I don't want to take too much time here. All right, and let's go back and do some more kicks and do our cross body reaches. Okay, now let's, besides do this, let's swing our arms. Okay, now just to be fun, how about if we do a little bit of hula? Get some movement going there. We'll do some dance. Woohoo! Okay, do the other side. Yes, we have fun when we do our exercise classes. That's all there is to it. All right, and just march in place for a minute and take a nice big deep breath. And exhale all the way down. Inhale again. And exhale down. Let's roll those shoulders. All right, and open and close the hands. Try to stimulate everything. And thank you so much for joining us. Hope you enjoyed that.
Thank you, Jackie.
You are welcome.
I got up and did it too. You just didn't see me.
I could see you doing it.
Jackie can attest to it. I often multitask during her exercise classes in the morning. I'll have two computers going and she'll be talking about sitting up proud. So I notice my posture even while she's going and I'm doing other work and I can hear her going. So
just a word about that. So
yeah.
when you're doing anything, I really harp about tall and proud, because if you think about the fact that if you're leaning forward like this, right, you're not tall and proud. Think of all the vital functions that happen in your body in this area. Mm-hmm. And if you're not tall and proud, all those things are getting squished, right? So your liver can't work well, your pancreas can't work well, you can't digest food the way you should. So you really want to think about the tall and proud, because then that way it opens everything up and it stacks the vertebrae and it makes the muscles hold everything in place. So back to you.
That's good. No, that's good. Hold on. Yes. Make room for your guts today, everyone. Sit up tall and proud. All right. So our next guest is a senior at UNC Chapel Hill, majoring in medical anthropology with a minor in health and society. After completing her undergrad, she hopes to take a year off to work in the community and then attend grad school for occupational therapy. She's currently the music and memory intern at Carolina Meadows and is really enjoying her time there, meeting all the residents, learning their stories, and creating playlists for them. I think Charlotte's on, but her camera is off. I'll have her say hello if she wants to, and then she has a recorded session, and then she's going to come on for Q&A. Charlotte, did you want to say hello? Up there.
Yes. Hey, everyone. Yeah, my name's Charlotte, and I'm a senior at UNC Chapel Hill. I did have to do a pre-recorded session just because my Wi-Fi here is kind of spotty, so hopefully that'll work well. But after the presentation, I'll still be on, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. So I hope you enjoy.
All right. Thanks, Charlotte. I'm going to go ahead and share that here in a sec. All right. Is everybody able to just see this where it says final Charlotte Grush presentation?
Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Charlotte Grush and I'm a senior.
Are y'all able to see the share? Hold on, let me stop and come back. Hold on, I apologize.
It was playing and then it stopped.
Okay, so it was working.
Yes, it was working.
Okay. It wasn't showing as shared on my screen, so I was, let me just come back in. Some with technology. I'm exercising my brain and getting this going.
That's right.
All right, hold on. All right.
I could hear the music there for a second. There you go. You got it.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Charlotte Grush and I'm a senior at UNC Chapel Hill. I am majoring in medical anthropology and I have a minor in health and society. I hope to attend grad school after graduating to become an occupational therapist. I'm also the current music and memory intern at Carolina Meadows. I became interested in this position after I had my own experience at the continuing care facility that my grandparents moved to in Greensboro. My grandmother and great aunt both have dementia, and I wanted to learn about how to connect with them more, as well as others with dementia. During my internship, I have been learning a lot about not only dementia, but the importance of music in an individual's life. At my internship here, I helped to run the Music and Memory program, and I'd like to share some of the information about the program with you today. Before the Music and Memory program officially began in 2006, none of the 16,000 continuing care facilities in the United States used iPods, headphones, or any other kind of music technology. Today, more than 5,300 continuing care facilities around the United States use some sort of music technology with their residents. Since the program has started, there has been over 75,000 people involved in the Music and Memory program, which is helping people with dementia. Before getting into the details of the program itself, it's important to understand what exactly dementia is. Dementia is an umbrella term for many types of mild to severe cognitive impairment. Dementia includes Alzheimer's, vascular dementia, Lewy body dementia, and other frontotemporal disorders. Dementia refers to a group of symptoms that relates to the loss of cognitive functions. Cognitive functions includes things such as thinking, remembering, and reasoning. Additionally, dementia affects the cognitive functions of language skills, visual perception, problem solving, self-management, and the ability to focus and pay attention. Someone with dementia begins to slowly decline in these functions, and eventually it interferes with a person's day-to-day life. Though individuals with dementia have a hard time remembering the names for things, places, and facts, and maybe some of their loved ones, their memory of their teenage years and early adulthood are well preserved. It is also important to recognize that dementia is a progressive brain disease and it is not a normal part of aging. Dementia can be categorized in many ways, but the majority of people split it up into 3 stages. Someone who has early or mild dementia is still mostly able to care for their own physical needs, but they often make uncharacteristically unsafe or risky decisions. At this stage of dementia, it is harder for people to complete complex tasks efficiently or accurately. For example, it may be more difficult to drive or cook on their own. Other tasks that the individual used to plan or organize for themselves, such as managing their medication or finances, may not be completed safely or successfully. The person may begin to misplace items and forget names of people on a regular basis. They may say things that seem odd or will start to repeat themselves more than usual. Often, a person with early stage dementia will begin to withdraw from their friends and may become depressed. The next stage of dementia is moderate dementia. Someone who has moderate dementia is usually not able to complete most routine tasks on their own. For example, they may not be able to cook safely, pick out appropriate clothing for the weather, or they may have a hard time remembering basic information such as their address or what day it is. At this stage of dementia, sleep patterns also begin to change and the individual becomes sleepier during the day and more restless at night. It is usually hard for a person with moderate dementia to follow instructions even if they are basic. Some people also begin to have noticeable personality changes during this stage and may experience delusions. In the final stage of dementia, the late or severe stage, an individual requires full-time caregiving with daily personal care activities. A person with late-stage dementia has significant problems communicating and may not be able to recognize themselves or their surroundings. The individual's physical abilities begin to decline, and they gradually stop walking, standing, sitting, and eventually swallowing. In the general U.S. population, 5 to 7% of individuals over the age of 65 have some form of dementia or other mild cognitive impairment, and this number rises to anywhere between 25 to 50% of the population over age 85. In Carolina Meadows, 30 to 40% of the residents have mild cognitive impairment or dementia. In the Pines Health Center, where I'm currently based due to COVID-19, around 80 to 90% of the residents has some kind of cognitive impairment or dementia. In an individual with dementia, the brain declines in mass and connections between neurons are affected. Neurons are a part of the nervous system, and they are responsible for sending and receiving information. Neurons lose their ability to communicate when someone has dementia, and as they die, the brain literally shrinks, which is called brain atrophy. The first change in the brain happens in the hippocampus, the part of the brain which controls memory. Other changes happen in the cerebral cortex, the part of the brain which is responsible for language, reasoning, and social behavior. Now that you have a little bit of background on dementia, let's explore the relationship between music and the brain. Though many cognitive functions begin to decline with dementia, one thing that is not lost is the ability to engage with and enjoy music. The human brain is hardwired to connect music to long-term memories. Beloved musicians and songs can elicit recollection of lyrics or previous experiences involving the music. This is why when a person hears a song, it can seem to bring them back in time to relive a memory, such as hearing a song that they danced to at their wedding. Music is important in all stages of life, from the very beginning of a person's life, such as when a parent sings a lullaby to help a baby sleep, to discovering yourself as a teenager, to making memories with your loved ones and family as an adult. No matter what stage of life, your brain is connecting special moments to music so that when you hear the song again, you can remember those moments and enjoy past memories. Different types of music have different effects on the brain. For example, while jazz music has the tendency to soothe the body, pop and rock music are shown to wake you up and improve physical performance. This is why many people listen to upbeat music when they exercise. As you can see in the picture on the right, when an individual is listening to music, more parts of their brain wake up and become active. Listening to music also helps with anxiety and can help facilitate day-to-day activities for those with dementia. Your body also creates chemical responses when you listen to music, such as increasing the levels of dopamine when you listen to music that you like. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter and a chemical that is responsible for giving you that feel-good feeling. Because the increase in dopamine happens when you listen to music, Stanford University decided to do a study on the effects of music and dopamine on the brain. The study found that listening to music created a significant reduction in agitation and could be supplemented with antidepressants and antipsychotics. Music is embedded in the brain in emotional centers, memory centers, and movement centers, which explains why when much of the brain is gone, music can still wake it up. Because people with dementia start to draw into themselves and forget things, some people lose a sense of who they are. Music has the power to bring these memories back, and memories provide identity again. A lot of an individual's identity is formed during the ages of 16 and 25, and it's also a prime time for people to find the music they love. All of the big life changes that happen during these years connect to music and can create some of the most impactful memories. When individuals with dementia feel like they are slipping away, listening to that music can help trigger memories and help those individuals feel whole again. They can use music to connect to things they remember in order to create a sense of who they are and bring them back home. In fact, Dr. Oliver Slacks states that music has the ability to activate more parts of the brain than any other stimuli. The past, which is not recoverable in any other way, is embedded, as if in amber, in the music, and people can regain a sense of their identity. Additionally, Dr. Connie Tomeno states that by awakening these pathways, we have the gateway to reach somebody who is otherwise unreachable. Now that we understand a bit more about how music affects the brain and can help people with dementia, it is important to understand how we can use music to help individuals with cognitive impairment. One person who saw the importance of music and memory was Dan Cohen. Dan Cohen started the Music and Memory program in New York. This program is a nonprofit organization that brings personalized music into the lives of the elderly or infirm through digital music technology, vastly improving their quality of life. Carolina Meadows became a certified music and memory community in 2014, and our program primarily serves residents who live in the Pines and the Green. Carolina Meadows also leads a Chatham County collaborative of music and memory programs among elder care groups in our area. In addition to starting this program, Dan Cohen helped with the film Alive Inside, which shares the importance of music in lives of individuals with dementia and other cognitive impairments. Here's the trailer for the film.
What do you think of music?
My heart belongs to music. I love it.
Have you ever had music just hit you in a place that immediately brought you to tears? Music has that power.
Music connects people with who they have been, who they are in their lives. Because what happens when you get old is all the things you're familiar with and your identity are all just being peeled away.
Our healthcare system imagines the human to be a very complicated machine. We have medicines that can adjust the dials. Blood pressure, oh, turn that down. Blood sugar, oh, turn that down. We haven't done anything to touch the heart and soul of a patient.
One resident that barely opened her eyes, she didn't respond. Knew her for 2 years. Once we put the iPod on her, she started shaking her feet. She started moving her head. It was amazing.
Music has more ability to activate more parts of the brain than any other stimulus.
Who am I? Who am I? I'm your daughter.
By exciting or awakening those pathways, we have a gateway to stimulate and reach somebody who otherwise is unreachable.
It can't get away from me if I'm in this place.
It takes me back to my school days. Oh God, that's beautiful.
Does it make you happy to sing for us?
Yeah. Don't cry.
Every human being needs stimulation from the outside, from little babies to old people.
American culture is wrong. There is actually life beyond adulthood. There's the opportunity to live and grow and become elders. The aging that we experience holds in it very important learnings and lessons.
There is no pill that does that.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so there's tears of joy.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to grow wings.
I was trying.
I really enjoyed watching this film because it showed just how powerful music can be in someone's life. Though all music can create positive reactions, some songs can evoke stronger reactions than others. Because music is personal and is often tied to emotions and memories, this program helps create individual playlists that are tailored to the person with dementia. In order to create a playlist, it is best to start with a general category of music that the individual likes, such as classical, jazz, or doo-wop. Next, you can move to more specific things, such as favorite artists like Bing Crosby or Perry Como, and then it's easy to find specific songs that a person likes or songs that could trigger memories. There is also a My Favorite Music questionnaire on the Alive Inside website, which I'll show you at the end of this presentation. This questionnaire can help someone interview an individual with dementia in order to create a playlist. Some examples of questions on this questionnaire are, what music did you listen to when you were young? Do you remember going to see live music? What songs did you listen to at your wedding? And what songs did you listen to at your high school prom? And finally, do you have any favorite records, tapes, or CDs that we could listen to? Using this questionnaire is really useful because it allows you and the individual with dementia to make a connection and relive some of those memories of the past. Creating a playlist for someone can also be a good intergenerational project for volunteers and children. By listening to music and talking about their own lives growing up, individuals with dementia can form connections with those helping them with a playlist or listening to music with them. These personalized playlists can be listened to on various devices, such as CD players, iPods, and speakers, as well as the Alive Inside headphones. As you can see in this picture, the woman is wearing a pair of orange headphones that are part of the Music and Memory program. These headphones are really easy to use and do not have any cords for people to worry about. The headphones have 5 buttons on them. One is for playing and pausing the music and is located in the center of the headphones. 2 buttons are also used for adjusting the volume, and 2 buttons are used for skipping songs or going back to the certain song that you heard before. The headphones work by a microchip that you upload with the person's personalized playlist, and you put the microchip into the side of the headphones. After being part of the Music and Memory program, many residents and their loved ones have experienced amazing results. People who are in the program find improved quality of life, including improved cognition, communication, and a reduction in stress. Favorite music can calm chaotic brain activity and anxiety and allows listeners to regain a connection with others. Not only does this program help those with dementia, but it can also decrease stress for the caretakers because it can calm their loved one and allow them the opportunity to reconnect with them. Here's a short clip from a YouTube video created called Music and Memory Part 1, Its Importance in Long-Term Care. The video features a resident at Carolina Meadows and a volunteer listening to the playlist together.
The camptown ladies sing their song. The camptown race that's 5 miles long. I come down there with my hat pinned in. I go back home with a pocket full of the long tail filly and the big black horse. They fly the track and the goats are the claws. The blind horse sticking in a big mud hole.
Hey, look. We got it.
You definitely have it.
Anyway, you like music, right?
Yeah, I love music.
So what type of music is your favorite music?
Anything, as long as it's good music.
As long as it's good.
Really? Seriously?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's good.
Right?
And how does the music make you feel?
Good.
By now, I hope you can see the importance of music to someone with cognitive impairment. So, what can you do to help? Because some people feel powerless with the progression of dementia and their loved one, they can regain a sense of empowerment by creating these playlists. The first thing that you can do for someone else is by starting now. You need to go ahead and ask your loved one about their favorite songs and bands. Get a head start on their playlist while it's still easy to talk to them, and remember what they like. You can also help them by listening to any tapes, CDs, or records that they have sitting around. In addition to that, there are free programs such as Pandora, Spotify, and Apple Music that you can use to look up your loved one's favorite artists and songs with them on a computer, smartphone, or tablet. Another way to help is to make listening a part of your loved one's everyday routine, such as before they go to bed or in the afternoon during some downtime. In addition to helping your loved ones, you also have many opportunities to help yourself. One of these opportunities is to participate in the webinars and other certifications that Music and Memory offers so that you can educate yourself. These training materials include learning logistics such as using iTunes and creating playlists, as well as things like how to interview your loved ones with specific questions designed to help them remember their favorite music groups and songs. This program is not only beneficial for your loved ones, though. You can go ahead and create your own playlist and see if you can uncover some songs from your past which will trigger your memories. Finally, the last thing you can do to help is by continuing to listen to music with family and friends as you age to help you retain all of your good memories. Thank you so much for joining me today. Here are a few resources where you can find more information about this program online. You can also feel free to contact me at cgrush@carolinameadows.net or Tracy Thrall at thrall@carolinameadows.net.
Thank you, Charlotte. I'm going to kick it back over to you.
Yeah.
It's,
So, yeah, you can hear me. So I really hope you guys enjoyed that presentation. I think it's especially important right now to listen to music as we do, have to social distance. This is something that you can do with other people through technology if you'd like, or if you have a speaker, because listening to music is not only a good way to retain your memories and kind of relive some moments of the past, but it's another way to make connections with those around you. Listening to music is something you can do with someone you've known for a long time or someone you don't know very well at all. It's something that can bring all of us together.
Excellent, thank you. You got some good feedback on there too. I don't know if anyone who's watching has any questions on that. I know I've seen that movie, Alive Inside's excellent. At one point it was on Netflix. I don't know if it's still is.
It still is on Netflix. It's a super awesome movie. If anyone wants to check it out, it has Netflix. It's a really great film that kind of explores both the music side and the aging and how aging and music can be used together as a positive experience.
Excellent. Does anyone have any questions? You can use the chat, you can use the Q&A, you can use the raise your hand feature. Or if anyone has some experience with this, with a loved one, if they want to talk about it too, we can certainly open it up for that. It was pretty straightforward, so I don't know. Yeah. Jackie, did you have
a really great presentation? I was involved with the Music and Memory program in the previous senior community that I worked in, and it was really amazing to see the smiles that would come on people's faces when they heard the music that they liked. So if anybody needs help, we do offer some music and memory through the Council on Aging for some folks. I'm not sure how many. I don't know how many headsets and things we have left. I really am excited to see the new equipment that they offer with the new headsets, because that was something we had a really tough time with the cords and the iPods and all that kind of stuff. So that was really good. And it looks like a couple of people are wondering about where you can purchase the headsets and the headphones that you showed.
Yeah, so if you go to the Alive Inside website, it's just aliveinside.org. They have a link to actually watch the movie if you want to do that. And they also have resources such as purchasing the headphones as well as training videos for how to use the headphones, as well as other kind of technology to upload the music to the headphones. It's a pretty easy process to figure out if you have to by yourself. But I will be here all through the rest of the summer and hopefully through the school year. And if you have any questions or difficulties, I'm happy to help you out there.
All right, and Andy says that his father was helped just as this program started. He was in the dementia ward at one of the North Carolina run veterans homes, and notes that if you have old radios, etc., there are low income homes that do need the equipment. So that's good to know. Someone is raising their hands. They're just listed as owner, so I don't know what their name is, but I'm going to, if they want to unmute and ask a question, they may.
Krista, it's Susan.
Oh, hey, Susan.
Yes, I want to let people know that we do offer music and memory through the Council on Aging, and we can set people up with the all-in-one headset as well, and I can work with Charlotte on that as well.
Excellent. Thanks, Susan. And someone's asking, Mary's asking for the link to the Netflix documentary. So I'm going to look that up right quick.
So Charlotte, what would you say your favorite memory has been working with the music and memory program?
I would definitely say my favorite has been the sing-along sessions that we've done. We haven't had any small group activities, so me and sometimes one of my other coworkers would go room to room and do some of the songs from a sing-along book. So that's really fun and exciting. It's any song from, you know, Bicycle Built for Two, which a lot of people know, or Home on the Range. It's just a very big thing, and just going in and breaking up people's day, and rather than watching the news all day or something, just bringing in a little joy is really great.
Yes, that's very powerful. Thank you for doing that, and thank you for going into your line of work, because we really need people that are coming in and doing these kind of things and adding joy to seniors' lives, especially seniors that have dementia. So, anybody else have any questions?
I'm not seeing it on Netflix anymore, but I'm looking for a link here. Hold on.
The other thing, I know it might be on Amazon Prime, but you might have to pay a couple dollars for that one.
Susan has raised her hand again. Susan, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I have a copy of the movie at the center, and I loan it out to anyone that would like to watch it.
Excellent. Excellent.
Wonderful.
Let's see here. And I'm finding there's also aliveinside.us, and I'll put that link in the chat, and that's got a link to watch the film.
Susan is ready, has another question or raising her hand again. At least on my end, I show it.
Okay, maybe I didn't put her hand back down.
Okay.
There we go. All right, so that link too that I just put into chat should get you resources around that as well. And then of course people can get in touch with Charlotte. Thank you, thank you. Does anyone else have any comments, questions, thoughts, anything that they want to share that they particularly enjoyed from that piece or anything else? I appreciate everyone for hanging in there with us. We had some really great topics today. Thank you, Charlotte, for joining us. I guess if no one else has questions, I'll kind of give a little preview of tomorrow. And I don't know if Jackie, you still want to do brain break. I could also play some music. We could just all dance around, and however, we've got some time. But if you're going to join us tomorrow, our programs tomorrow, we're going to start off with Melanie Bunn from the Dementia Alliance. She is a dementia training specialist, and she's going to talk a little bit about caregiving under COVID, how the complications and how to deal with that. And then we got Kate Finlayson, who does NIA, which is this excellent mind, body, movement program. She's going to be on tomorrow. And then we also have Matt Jones from the Cooperative Extension, who's going to be showing us how to grow vegetables from seed. Then if you join us on Friday, we have our own board member, Nancy Greger-Holt, will be on talking about advanced directives. We have Pat Balmediano is going to talk about nutrition and bone health. And then David Kirkman will be on talking with us about his new book, Elder Fraud Wars and How to Protect Yourself Against Elder Fraud and Scams. And so we're excited to have you join us, and we're so grateful for Charlotte to have joined us today and for all of our presenters. For more information on them, you can definitely take a look. And Charlotte, I just want to ask, and I'll spotlight you back.
Yeah.
Could you possibly send us along a PDF of your slides that I could kind of, okay, yeah. And so we'll be able to share that out too with folks, and we'll get that out to you guys. So thank you so, so much, Charlotte. We appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
You're quite welcome. Jackie, did you want to do a quick little something for us? Or?
Did you find some royalty-free music?
I can find some royalty-free music here. What kind of flavor do you want?
Whatever you get me.
All right, let's see.
How's that for being bold?
There we are. There's a lot of trust involved here.
That's right. So we're just gonna move, folks.
All right, so let's see what we got here. I've got a sound collection.
We'll just start marching in place.
You want
so we hear what the music maestro is giving us.
Happy mood. I don't even know what these sound like, so we're just gonna start one and see what comes up.
Okay, so what I want you to think about as this starts to play is think about the value of music to your brain, okay? And think about what it makes you feel like.
Is that too fast?
Up a little bit. Ooh. Ooh, move those shoulders. All right. Pull those shoulders. Do the hula. All right, let's do a few swim strokes, like we're enjoying the water. We're at the beach. At the beach with some friends, and we're gonna do a little bit of swimming. All right. After you do a freestyle stroke like this, go ahead and roll over on your back and do the back stroke. I'm trouble hearing it. All right. Go ahead and do the breaststroke. We're just moving. We're having fun. We're enjoying the music. A little bit of side stroke. Go the other way. Never understood the side stroke or the crawl, whatever they call it. All right. Now let's go ahead. We're keeping the brain going. We're increasing that blood flow. Let's do some jump roping. Remember when you were a kid and you jump rope? Take yourself back to that time. I can hear it, David. Here it is. Make your circles a little bigger. Think about jump roping. When you were kids, did you ever do double dutch? Yeah. All right, let's bring those arms backwards. All right, bring those circles smaller. Keep still going. You can do this sitting, you can do it standing. This you can do while you're watching TV if you want. How about crisscross applesauce? Okay, crisscross those arms. Change each time, change which arm's on top. All right, now, let's go back to doing those little kicks. Remember, what did we do to build the connection between the two hemispheres of the brains? Anybody remember? We do crisscross, that's right. We do crisscross with the arms. We're crossing the midline of the body. Is the music still playing? I'm having trouble hearing it. All right, I think we need to go back to some hula. Go the other way. I know that there's a real way to hula and then there's a Jackie hula, which is anything that works. All right, how about if we step over to the side and just swing our arms? Like we're in the waves of the ocean, moving with the ocean. All right, let's roll our shoulders back. All right. Why don't we cut the music for a minute? All right. And we're going to end today like we normally do when we do an exercise class. And do you remember what she said about how important it is to be stress-free? So we're going to do a little relaxation here. And the function of the relaxation is to quiet the brain and make the brain more mindful, okay? So we're going to do it in a way, and I'm going to move out toward the front of my chair a little bit. And I'm going to sit comfortably, and I'm going to remember my posture, shoulders over hips, ears over shoulders, okay? I'm going to take a nice big deep breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. In through your nose and out through your mouth. This time when you exhale, start making a shh noise. So inhale, exhale with a shh. Inhale again, exhale, shh. Now I want you to imagine as you're exhaling and you shh, that you're relaxing those shoulders down as much as possible. And close your eyes if it helps you block things out. Now with your hands resting on your thighs, go ahead and just curl your hands into a fist as you inhale. Feel the tension in your fists and then relax your fists as you exhale. Do that again. Curl your hands, inhale. Open your hands as you exhale. Notice the difference between the tension and the relaxation. Now do the same thing with your feet. Curl your toes, tighten your feet as you inhale. As you exhale, let it relax. Do the same thing with your feet again. And exhale, relax. One more time, inhale and exhale. I want you to move to your core and I want you to squeeze the cheeks of your butt together. Squeeze them together as you inhale. Then exhale and let your whole core relax. Do that again. And just sit there for a minute and breathe normally. Just inhale and exhale and bring your focus across your whole body. And as you scan your body, if you find an area that's full of tension or tightness, just exhale and pretend you're exhaling out all that tension. Once you get rid of the tension in that part of your body, go to a different part of your body. And notice how your body can get lighter and lighter with each exhale. When you get done with this, you can be restful and relaxed, yet energized and ready to face the rest of your day. So go ahead and open your eyes, take a nice big inhale and raise your arms up. Reach nice and high. Exhale, bring your arms down. Let's do that again. Bring them all the way up and all the way down. Exhale all the way down. Bring your arms up around and hug yourself. Feel the feeling of your hands on your shoulders. Squeeze. Remember that you're healthy and you're safe. Inhale again, bring your arms around the other way. Remind yourself that you're loved and you're valued and you're full of peace. And relax. Have a wonderful day, everybody. We're glad you decided to join us. The value of relaxation is important. It helps lower blood pressure. It helps improve digestion. It helps calm the mind. So that's why we always try to end our exercises with that. So hope you have a great day. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow.